Good evening. Welcome to the Township of Whitewater Region Regular Council meeting for Wednesday, November 3, 2021 at 4:46 p.m. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Please stand for the prayer. Almighty, we give thanks for the great blessings which have been bestowed on Canada and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. Guide us in our deliberations as township councillors and strengthen us in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. Grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to preserve the blessings of this country for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Amen. Thank you. Any disclosure of interest for this evening from any council members? Seeing none, thank you. No public meeting this evening. We'll go to announcements. Reeve Rigier.
Thank you, Mayor. As lead of Human Resources, I'm pleased to announce that Brett McNamara has been selected and accepted the position of driver operator. Brett has completed his AZ driver's course at Fifth Wheel Training Institute in New Liskeard, Ontario. Also, Brett obtained his small engine mechanic license at Georgian College. Brett has previous experience with the municipal setting as he worked as a casual general maintenance Class 1 operator for the city of Pembroke and as a seasonal laborer for the town of Petawawa. Brett will be starting with the township with all of us on November the 8th. So if you see him out and about, please give him a warm welcome. And we welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Jackson.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Nicholson.
Nothing at this time.
Mayor has nothing at this time. So now we will move on to reports, and we're going to the draft budget. 6.1. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region move into Committee of a Whole with the Liaison for Fire Finance Administration in the chair to receive a presentation from the Treasurer, Deputy CAO on the draft 2022 budget. Motion as seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Mackay. Thank you. And this goes to Councillor Jackson. Oh, all those in favor? Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to the budget. Councillor Jackson.
Welcome, everyone, to our first budget meeting, and I will pass it over to our Treasurer, Sean Crozier. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. So firstly, I'd want to welcome everyone today to the first presentation of our 2022 budget. I want to thank staff for taking the time to be here. Some have come during their vacation, some during their hunt, and some simply away from their family during family time. We have staff from all departments here to field any questions that may arise. Just a few housekeeping notes. There will be opportunities to ask questions. I just ask that you wait until the slides that call for questions. This helps with the flow of the presentation and keeps the dialogue on track. There are 7 opportunities to ask questions, first being when I'm through this list, then after the fees and charges, after the general operating budget, after the water budget, after the wastewater budget, after the debenture section, which I have changed in my presentation to be ahead of the capital section, then after the capital section, and then at the end of the presentation. So with that, I guess I'll ask if there's any questions before we begin. I will move on. So just quickly, we'll go through the schedule that we have. So we're here tonight on November 3rd. The first real draft that's being presented to you. We will take some direction, and I'm assuming have some dialogue through this meeting. We'll take some direction and come back on November 24th, which is a special meeting. And then at that point, we'd present to you a second draft, probably followed by more discussion and see where we're at that point. And then on December 15th, have our public meeting. And then if all goes well, we'll end up on January 5th, 2022, adopting the budget bylaws. So before we really get going, I think it's important that we have an understanding of what a percentage point is. So this over the 2021 levy, 1% equals just over $60,000. So I think that's a good barometer of when we're talking percentages coming up, what that is. Now I will note that that's over the operating. So when we get to water and wastewater, the percentages at that point are different. But for the main focus, when we speak with the tax levy, 1% is just over 60,000. So kind of some lights before we get started. So this draft presented to you calls for a tax levy increase of 3.5%. And in that 3.5% is a 1.5% cost of living allowance applied to the employment grid. There's in the capital reinvestment reserve a contribution of $274,570. This is an additional 1% on top of last year's contribution, so that's in keeping with a policy from a few years ago. There's just shy of a $1 million investment in new capital and special projects that we have. Or sorry, we'll go back to the investment in infrastructure. There's 4 road projects, continued investment in the fire in some fire projects, including the PPE, investment in trails and boat launches, and a server replacement. Those are really the main drivers of the capital. In special projects, these are driven by Ontario's modernization grant intakes, where we have collaborated with neighboring municipalities on applications to achieve efficiencies, whether this is in software enhancement, studies or reviews, etc. So before we get into the levy, just a quick little blurb on different types of taxes. So sales tax is calculated, most people would be familiar, sales tax is calculated by what you buy times the applicable percentage. In Ontario, it's 13%. So that tax is driven by the amount that somebody purchases. So if they have a lot of purchases, they pay a lot in HST. I'm just trying to make a comparison between the different types of taxes that people are familiar with to the property tax, because it's completely different. Income tax, same idea, is calculated by the amount. It's a tiered system. The more that somebody earns, the more tax that they have, or the more income that they have taxed. And then for people that are in business, the accounting equation of a statement of financial position or a balance sheet is assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. So this is all things that the average person would probably be more familiar with than their property tax. When it gets to property tax and the municipal equation, people sometimes maybe feel like this poor gentleman. But the formula is the tax levy equals assessment times the tax rates. So there's a couple ways you can look at this. I think the most appropriate way to look at it is the tax levy is the amount that we tax or put on the ratepayer to pay us. So a lot of times people pay attention to tax rates, and they're concerned about where a rate goes, whether rates an increase or decrease, and that seems to be the narrative, and that comes later in the year. However, I don't think that's what we should be paying attention to at this point in time. It is possible that a tax rate can increase or a tax rate can decrease, and the ratepayer would still pay the same amount. The drivers of a property tax bill, the biggest driver, I guess, would be the input of a tax levy. So I would consider that as an input. We, as a municipality, need to decide how much money we need to operate, and that's the first part of the tax equation. The second part is assessment. Assessment is decided by MPAC. We don't have property assessors in-house. MPAC is an arm's length Crown corporation that they're with determining assessment. I don't know a lot of what goes into the assessment drivers, but feel free, people can reach out to them. They're the experts. Tax rates. This is a complex calculation that involves the use of ratios. The County of Renfrew, on advice from the Tax Policy Working Group, which consists of Renfrew County treasurers, sets the ratios per class. This is done to develop a weighted average assessment so that rates can be established. We look at this more detail when the tax rates are set, typically in May of each year. And I'll discuss more about that later in the year when we get to that point. So like I said, this is how you might be feeling, like this person here. It is important not to get drawn away into other parts of the equation tonight. What is important is MPAC determines assessments, the County of Renfrew determines the ratios, which in turn determines our rate, or well, we determine the tax levy, and then all those together really bring a tax rate, which comes later in the year. So I just wanted to get ahead of that. So how is the levy calculated? So there's operating capital. So first we have to distinguish between what's operating and what is capital. Well, operating keeps the lights on. It's the day-to-day operation, routine maintenance, cost of employees, supplies, maintenance, etc. Capital, it adds value. Speaking as a municipality, we have tangible capital assets. You might hear of some companies such as Microsoft or Apple or other companies that have brands and they have what's called intangible capital assets. We don't have any of those. We have tangible capital assets, which means you can physically touch them, you can physically see them, and they perform a service for you. When an operating expense is required for the day-to-day functioning of the municipality. So like I explained earlier, keeping the lights on. So we spend money, we pay money to lights on or pick a number of other services, whether it's maintenance or salaries, etc. That's just to operate. Capital, think of capital when we get to that point as a trade of assets. So we trade the asset, a financial asset, i.e. cash, for a tangible asset, one that we can touch or use to deliver a service. And then assets depreciate over time or amortize over time. We as a municipality do not have to budget for amortization or depreciation. However, amortization / depreciation, depends on what school you come from, what they call it, they will show up in our financial statements. So it gets from a budget to financial statements to the financial information return. Things can get kind of messy, but again, what's important tonight is we don't have to budget for depreciation. So how we determine what our levy is, and again, that's the tax that's the amount that's levied on the ratepayer to pay. We determine our total expenses. We less out our grants or subtract our grants that we're going to receive. We take away our user fee revenue. We take away our transfer from reserves, and what we have left is what we have to levy upon the residents. It's the difference maker. What does the levy cover? It covers capital that's not covered through grants. So we have capital grants such as gas tax and OCIF, or we have reserves that we've set aside that we're going to use for future capital work. So if we identify a capital project that we can't cover through a reserve, a capital grant or reserves, then the tax levy would have to cover that. It also covers operating not covered through grants. Some operating grants that we have are OMPF and Canada Summer Jobs. So we obviously, if we are successful in getting a summer student grant, the tax levy would not cover that. But if we were not successful, it would have to cover those operating expenses. Okay, on this slide, this is just to reiterate that when a ratepayer receives their tax bill, not every dollar that they pay to the Township of Whitewater Region stays with the Township of Whitewater Region. As you can see from this is the 2021 budgeted amount. So we haven't obviously finished 2021, so the reconciled numbers aren't in at this time. But 44% stays with the municipality. 10% would go to policing, 31% to the County of Renfrew, and then 15% to the school boards. What we get out of this is we are charged with invoicing, collecting, reconciling those bills for the upper tier and the school boards, and we get the benefit of anything that we don't collect. We would get the interest charged on that. But other than that, we are the middle person for the county and the school boards. We invoice out, we collect, and we pay to them. So at the first part of the budget, we'll start with the fees and charges. There have been a few changes since the package I delivered. I put an updated copy on everyone's desk. And I'll just kind of give a brief highlight and then be ready to take some questions. So in zoning and planning, the fees show an increase essentially in two areas, which are the karst and the severances. This is with an estimation of the time it takes to complete these requirements. There's been a slight increase, bear with me here, a slight increase in the building fees as we are going through a building services review and anticipate that there will be a recommendation for some sort of an increase. By increasing slightly at this point in time, we are not falling behind further of what we anticipate the review to recommend. There's a fee now for half of the arena slab. This is to recognize that some user groups do not use the entire slab when renting. This should decrease the burden on these user groups. You'll notice also in the recreation that these fees appear a bit different. However, it's just because we have removed the HST on these fees. We did this so that the bylaw shows all fees on a pre-HST basis. This helps eliminate confusion administratively. Finance will ensure that the fees applicable to HST will be charged HST. For instance, I just want to reiterate that an arena user will not see an increase with their fee per hour. The invoice will be the exact same on their end. this fee in-house on this bylaw is just administrative for us in-house. In finance, we have added a charge for transferring utility arrears to the tax roll. This fee is the same as an NSF charge, and it's in keeping in that same spirit. The draft I handed to council had a decrease in the recreational vehicle license, but has been changed as an increase. This is in keeping with the original bylaw that was passed regarding the recreational vehicle license. There's been an increase in the kennel and chicken license to offset the burden of labor for the inspections. Under the landfill, you'll see that it's changed. Those types of fees have changed. This is for the scale project. So once the scale project is completed, we'll have tipping fees per ton based on weight rather than vehicle classification. We have changed baled plastic to no tipping fee as we look to enter into a program to move that farm plastic along. Just under roads, we are not selling winter salt, so that's just more of a clarification. And then you'll notice there's a slight increase in the curbside collection fee, but I'll speak more on that during the operating budget under environmental services. And in water and wastewater, if we can hold off, so for the curbside collection fee in water and wastewater, if we can just hold off until we get to those points later in the presentation. So basically at this time, I will turn it back to the chair and hopefully field any questions up until this point in time. Thank you.
Is there any questions from council? Councillor Nicholson.
The first one I had is just about that recreational trailers, recreational vehicle licenses. I noticed the increase, but originally I had thought we had put that policy in place to cover things like a 911 sign and making sure that the site was suitable for that rec trailer to be put in place. Is it reasonable for us to recharge them the same fee, or could we have a renewal charge and a new registration charge? I just want to make sure that we're covering the right expenses off on that charge.
Maybe I'll turn that to CIO to...
Carmen, did you want to start? I can always add.
Go ahead, Carmen.
Okay. I assume it's going up to $300. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the original bylaw, just to, I guess, backtrack, the original bylaw said that over 3 years it was going to increase every bit until we got to the full amount of 300. One reason why we should go 300 is because multiple inspections need to be done on the site. Even though they're renewing it, we need to ensure that it's on the same place, and so there's still the same steps as there is for the first application. And if they don't apply, I have to hunt them down and get information from them. So it's the exact same step as 1 year as it is to renew. It's the same process, and we eased the price up so that they weren't getting hit so hard the first time around, and kind of eased them into the fee system. So that's the reason why the 300. Does that answer your question?
And if I can just add,
good.
I think it's important that it's an annual event because people can do things between seasons. And just $300 I know seems like a lot, but anybody that parks their trailer seasonally at a location will pay between $2,000 and $3,000. So the convenience of putting it on a lot somewhere within the confines of the bylaw still require us to confirm it meets all the requirements in terms of generators, septic, 911, all those things, and we need to do that on-site visit to confirm that. And we've had issues with people not conforming to the bylaw, which is why we have a bylaw. So checking in annually is important. And we still have some people that aren't complying. Although we have many that have come forward, there are others that don't. But if they get a waiver, and that's been approved by Committee of Adjustment, they don't have to redo the waiver, but they still have to do the permitting process.
No, that's perfect. I understand it better there. Just then to confirm that $300 is the max, that's the final phase-in number that we had planned when we adopted the policy?
Through the chair. Yeah, that's correct. 300 was yeah.
But at any point, that can be changed. It can be increased as warranted, but yes, it is the... I just have one question of recreation. So the hourly for the half slab, that is without ice, correct?
Yeah, that's just without ice.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Yes.
Jordan, just on that half rate, is that, I know there's a different price for prime. Is there such thing as prime for the slab?
Yeah, we don't have prime rates for the slab, so it's just one rate.
I think it's, in the copy I've got, it is listed as a,
Well, in the one that they've just updated, so there is ice rental and there is prime, but under slab rental, there is no, oh, there is an hourly prime.
Yeah, that's just a
$65.
typo error. It's a one rate, and then there's just the half slab rate.
perfect. And the second question is is it possible for two different organizations to rent the slab, half the slab at the same time?
There would be, it's just depending on what they're doing.
Excellent, okay.
Yeah, what the program is, so.
Good.
And I guess to follow up with that, Jordan, as well, can you put half the lights on, or is it the full lights? Because, I mean, if it's going to be the same cost, whether they're using half the slab or the full slab, then we should be reimbursing the cost. If we've based these rates at $65 per hour, and then we're not even coming up with half for the hourly rate at $22.12. One, it's not half of 65. It just doesn't make sense. Unless you can limit your expenses, that's really the only reason why we would limit our charge.
So two things. So we can limit the lights in one of our facilities. The second facility had new LED lights put in, so they're not using as much electricity. So it is a cost savings. So it depends on which facility that they're booking in.
And the third facility?
The third facility, we can also control the lights as well. So Beachburg, Cobden we can, and Westmeath is just one set of lights. It's our LED lights.
Okay. So before we move on, is all of council in favor of doing a half an hour or an hourly half slab rate? Just so that we understood, so that staff understand that that is, because that is a new rate for us. I just want to make sure that we're all okay with that. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Nicholson.
Sorry, Jordan, I just want to make sure, I'm going to get questions about it, so I want to, if I want to rent the slab during the weekday, it's 26 something. If I want to rent it, the whole thing at any time, otherwise it's 65. Or if I want to rent half anytime during the day, it's 22.
So I didn't hear your first question. If you can just repeat that.
It's just going through these three.
Yeah.
Can you just describe them in different words for me so I can appreciate what you mean by those three rates, 26, 65, and 22?
So we have, oh, geez, that's a little loud, isn't it? Better back away from that. Yeah, so there is three different rates. So primarily where this new rate is coming from is we have programs that take place in the facilities, and this is kind of an ongoing request that has been brought forward primarily by our pickleball groups. And because they don't use the full slab, they've looked for a half slab rate. And that's where this is coming from. So the half slab rate is for the programming side of pickleball, and then we also have our hourly rate, and then our weekday rate. So it is a little confusing, and I think that if we could come back and clean that up a little bit better, if you wish, we could just make it into two rates to make it a little bit simpler when we come back, if that's easiest.
I guess if you could define prime for us, because hourly weekday, so is that nighttime as well? When you had indicated that there was no prime for slab, what would define prime? Is that the weekend?
Yeah, so again, there's just those are typos. I think whenever we were going through everything, it was just with the hourlies, there was a weekday and a prime put in for the slab rental. Those shouldn't be in there for the slab rentals at all.
Okay, so the hourly per hour, regular, is going from $50 per hour down to $26.55?
That's correct, yeah, there should be two rates.
And the hourly, what was prime, is there anything going from 50 to 65?
if I may. Just because the HST's been taken out, which is probably confusing, so is it 2212 for half or 4424 for full? Is that easiest? Just double the half?
That's correct, yeah.
And get rid of the 65 and get rid of the 2655?
Right.
I think that's,
where it's getting mixed up. So it was $50 an hour. It should be 25 for half. I think with the HST, it's kind of throwing a little bit of a...
I think it's 4424
Then plus HST.
plus HST, and then 2212 plus HST.
And then what about the 65?
I think the 65 is a typo and should be removed. The other thing I should note at the top where it says ice rentals effective.
But then we're really decreasing our hourly rate from $50.
No, it was 50 inclusive of HST before.
Either or, $44. It's going from $44 down to 22 and 26.
So it was 50 inclusive of HST?
I get it, so 44,
44.
whatever it is, $44. Okay, then we're decreasing that rate down to $26.55
No.
and $22.12.
I don't think it should be 26.55. I think that's a typo. It should just be twice 22.12. So it should be
But, okay, so 44,
24,
24.
and then half if you're renting half.
So we're not decreasing, technically, we're not decreasing the rate at all.
No, we're just creating a half rate. I think that's just a typo. The other typo I should just note is that at the top, ice rentals effective, it should be August 1st, 22 to July 31st, 2023. Just to know when we book ice, we book for the ice season. So that's another typo to correct, the 2022 to 2023.
Okay. I think we're clear as mud. Mayor Moore.
One question for Jordan. What about evenings and weekends if somebody has to be called in for the rental of a slab?
So it'd be booked like everything else?
But then how are we going to recover our costs if we're reducing the price?
Well, it depends on the rental. So if we have, like, so for pickleball as an example, in the summertime, with the slab rentals, generally we have staff on throughout the week.
Yeah,
throughout
because
the
that's
days.
daytime.
Daytime, yeah, exactly. So we don't have a lot of requests for evenings, but if we know in advance when a rental may be, we can shift around those hours. So we can have a person start later in the day, but of course we do need some time in advance, but we don't get very many requests at this time.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Mackay.
I just want to go back to the trailers. Is that $300 a year, every year? Okay. No, there's nothing wrong with it. I just want to clear that up. So when you first get it, it's $300 when you first put your trailer?
So, through the chair. The first year we did it was, I believe, I want to say it was $125. The first year, $175. The second year was $225. This year will be $300. And it will stay $300. So any old people, $300. Any new people, $300. It's going to be the same, consistent now. We eased them into it. Now, that's it.
I think it's fair. I mean, you're putting a building on our, Okay, good enough, thanks.
And then just one other new one is the transfer of utility arrears to a tax roll. So just want to make sure that council's clear that they're okay with the $50 charge. With that, there is an administration nightmare at times that it does take quite a bit of time to do that. So I'm in total favor of it. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
I was looking at waste management, and I don't quite understand. Everything's by weight, and then all of a sudden, the mattresses and couches are $20. There's nothing about weight. I don't understand why we wouldn't just take it and put everything as weight, and you come in, you weigh, and you're gone. No matter what you have in your trailer.
Does our public
If
works
somebody could
manager?
explain to me the reasoning, that would be great.
Or Steve? Yep.
I can. Yes, for the mattress and the couches, because especially they're lighter, and also the amount of airspace it takes, because it is very hard to break down and everything. And we're also looking at with the program actually taking it out of the landfill. So we can ship it off and it can be recycled and taken apart. And that way it's not going into the landfill and taking a lot of airspace. Because I believe the numbers we did before, I think it was we received like 400 mattresses a year. Is that correct, Steve? Something in that range. So if you can imagine 400 mattresses stacked up, the amount of airspace it takes, and it's very difficult to break down.
Oh, I'm sure there's other things that are, styrofoam is another thing. Styrofoam is very light, but takes up a lot of space. So,
Yeah, and that's one downfall. There's downfalls from scales. The one thing you can imagine, if someone brings in a truckload of ICF styrofoam versus a truckload of shingles, it's same airspace potentially, but it's the actual weight difference is drastically totally different.
no,
So there's
a big-
downfalls.
Yeah, there's quite a drastic change there. And so I really, that's the one thing I seen, because everything else was by weight. Didn't matter what it was by weight. And then the mattresses are so I'm not quite in favor of that. I think I did talk to Steve today and I got a little bit of an explanation, but once again, it seems too simple to me, because if you're starting to pick something that's light and something that's not, something that's heavy, then because one thing takes more of the landfill than the other, it could be a great big nightmare if you wanted to try and be fair with everything. So personally, I would just like to see it $20, the $20 stroke, and you drive in, weigh, go. It makes it cleaner, simpler, and there's no arguing with the landfill attendant. So I understand a little bit of it, Lean, but like you say, when we start talking shingles and we start talking styrofoam, there's a big difference, and it still takes up, shingles take a lot less area than what the styrofoam does, and the shingles probably break down just as quick as the styrofoam. So that's my question, and that's the one thing I'm not in favor of. Thank you.
There we go. Is there any other comments? Is anybody else not in favor of this moving forward? Or do we want to go to a wait, or will we leave it at $20? Can I see a show of hands for leaving it at $20? Okay. Obviously, show of hands that leaving it not at $20 is Daryl. Okay, so we are effectively going to leave it at $20. As that is the majority of the council members that have voted that way. Is there any other questions with regards to any other fees? Reeve Rigger.
Thank you. Regarding the kennel license and the backyard chicken license, a $70 increase over 1 year, and I just don't understand why such an increase. Because it's my understanding that if bylaw is called out, those individuals are paid. They have to pay for that call out. So why are we so much of an increase?
Carmen?
Bylaw goes out, but then to process an application, I also have to send the building department out. Sometimes planning gets involved, so it's like any license, there is just more to it than just bylaw going out. Because there's a license with an application fee, I have to send planning and building department to go conform, to make sure it's all conformed to the planning, make sure if they're building shacks or something to house the animals in, they need to be inspected properly to make sure they meet setbacks. So we weren't recovering a cost with that.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Mackay.
So it's $20 more for 4 chickens than the original cost on top of that?
It's $70 more, isn't it? Yeah.
$7 a year?
No, it's $150 is.
for
It's
4
gone from
chickens. Take the egg, it would take
$80
72 years to pay off them eggs.
$250.
Okay, just bringing up the price of eggs and want to bring
Okay.
it forward. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, so just some direction from there. We'll clean up the recreation stuff. And that's about it. I think we landed on there. Is that correct, Rob? Okay, good. Okay, moving on. So I'll just take a 10-second break here. I think everyone to look at the screen and see if you can spot the error. So those do look like my glasses. I do have a calculator that's similar to that. I actually do enjoy drinking black coffee. I don't like printing in color, but we can do that, and it can make some graphs and fancy stuff. But you should never do a budget with a pen.
That's a fountain pen. You can't erase that any way, or shape, or form.
So I thought you'd enjoy that as much as I did. So, okay. So moving into the meat of the budget. So a little bit of a housekeeping thing here. So I've broken down the sections that we're about to go through of the budget into the functional areas of the financial information return. Although these aren't perfect, this is a standard set by the Municipal Affairs and Housing, and in which other ministries use the data to make decisions for grants, programs, etc. So under general government, you'll see governance, which is council, and they have it listed as corporate management, which is administration. So a way to look at it is like finance, clerk, HR, CAO, that administration isn't really a public-facing service. They're more behind the scenes. They're behind the scenes thing to administer what's going on at the municipality. As we move to the right, protective services. So what falls under protective services are fire, police, emergency measures, building permit, inspection services, and protective inspection and control, so bylaw enforcement. Under transportation services, this would be our roads, and what for us would be our paved, unpaved, and winter control, street lighting, and then the airport. Under environmental services, landfill, water and wastewater, and recycling would fall under here as well. But for the purposes of the next few slides, when we get to environmental, water and wastewater have been removed because they have their own section. Under recreation and cultural services, there's parks and arenas, and then libraries and museum. And then planning and development as planning and zoning, drainage, and stuff at the industrial park. So although the spreadsheets you got aren't necessarily in these orders, that's how they get reported in the financial information return and get reported on our financial statements. So I'll start with general government, and you will have questions, but again, I ask we just wait to the end so we can see the presentation or the budget as presented this time, kind of the bigger picture. So under general government, we have a line item dedicated to services and rents under the council, and this is for, you'll notice that was for assistance in operating the technology during council meetings. We have a slight increase in admin conferences and trade shows for virtual conferences as they come back. Again, very slight. There's been a slight increase to our on-serve IT cost. We have the election expense. Next year's an election year, and with that comes a large expense, but we've been budgeting every year, putting into reserve to offset a portion of that cost. We have Icity Enhancements, which is the financial software, and a finance intern, but this would be subject to getting the grant funding that we've applied through modernization, so a portion of those costs would be offset by grant revenue. We have Voice over Internet Protocol Project, which VoIP is the term on the slide. This includes getting other municipal buildings set up to have an extension at the main office. The benefit with VoIP is that all buildings would have an extension rather than a main number. So one phone number, transfer of calls to other buildings, and the possibility of using a mobile app to have calls transferred to cell phones. The main driver of the cost is getting the equipment in the main office and then purchasing the phones, power cords for the buildings. The ideal approach to this project would be to implement over time, i.e. pick a building, start with it, see how it works, and move on from there. And then I don't think the ideal approach would be to do all buildings at one time, be get one up and going, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. The cost savings over time would be the elimination of phone lines at those buildings. So there would be, if we were to do this, the buildings would just need to be on internet, which they already have, and then we would there would be a cost savings over time into perpetuity by not having a landline. So just not to put anyone to sleep here, but when looking at my spreadsheets under council, you would see an 8%. That is mainly driven by the assistance at council meetings. The main driver of administration is the transfer to capital reinvestment reserve. So you'll notice there's a transfer to reserve at that point for the capital reinvestment. That shows under administration. Then there's the election and the software enhancements, which I've touched on. And then under admin building, there's the VoIP project. So that's just those drivers. If you look at the percentages, you may be wondering, or when you did look at the percentages. Protective services. So moving on to protective services. So this has fire, OPP, building inspection, bylaw enforcement, and emergency measures. So fire will be able to achieve fit testing, the annual PP repairs, SCBA inspections. There's also a commitment to the vector training program solution, in which firefighters are able to receive online training, not just the select few who, or the few or some that would have went to the fire college. There was a slight reduction in OPP costs. There's a flood risk assessment in emergency. There's flood risk assessment in emergency as well as COVID-related costs. Expenses in the COVID line can be anything from PPE, tests, or security at buildings, or any other costs that have a direct correlation to COVID. We are still committing to having a $15,000 go to the emergency reserve to offset any cost to a future emergency. Typically, that gets associated with a flood, but can be any kind of emergency that we may experience. And then under building, we have an e-permitting system, which would allow residents to submit applications online, and this would be offset by grant money as well. Over to transportation services. The main driver of the increase in roads is the increase in the debt servicing costs. This is due to the Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road debenture that will be coming on the books next year, a tandem, and the excavator and compactor that we recently finalized debentures for. Street lights show an efficiency once we achieve the LED program, but an offset to that is that there would be some debt servicing costs. You would see debenture principal and interest repayments. The Pembroke Airport fuel tanks, these are I'm being told, pretty sure they're a go. We have budgeted a total of $100,000 for the airport between contribution for their levy, which is typically between $14,000 and $18,000, and our portion of what that capital project will cost. And depending on the loan amount they need, our contribution is likely in the neighborhood of $65,000 to $80,000. I just have this slide here to show the gravel road program. So, I'll just, the next slide will zoom in a little bit more, but as you see, there is a little bit of to the right side of the map that's cut off of the township, but there weren't any green roads. Green roads are the 2022 roads. And then I'll just move one more slide here, try this, and zoom in. So the gravel road program proposed is Acres Road between from Queens Line to Mindview Road, Desjardins Road, Hawthorne Road to Gore Line, McLaughlin Road to Sturgeon Mountain to Beachburg Road, Moores Beach Road, Sandpoint Road, Sturgeon Mountain Road, which is McLaughlin Road to Zion Line, and then Tim Road. So a total of about 12 kilometers of gravel road. Just bear with me here one second. Oh. Under environmental services, there's a slight increase in the collection fee, and this is to offset the increase in the curbside contract, and we have proposed leaf and yard waste days. Essentially, we have 3,708 units. With the fee that we propose would bring in $597,000, and that would pay the Miller contract and the for recycling and the processing, and the Miller contract for waste, and then a leaf and yard waste days, so it balances itself out. And then we have the change, like we spoke about earlier, in the fees and charges to the scale project, and then a continued contribution to reserve for the landfill post-closure costs, which we will try to do every year for the next, I think, 19 years to pay for those costs when the landfill is anticipated to be full. Under Recreation and Cultural Services, the rec grant is proposed to double from $5,000 to $10,000. The demand for arenas has not returned at this point to what it was pre-COVID, but we anticipate or hope that it will return to those levels in the fall. We are proposing a slight increase to the library and museum grant. They haven't had an increase in the last couple of years, and it's very slight. I think, if I recall correctly, library might be $2,000, and museum is in the same realm anyway, percentage-wise. And then we have the Senior Liaison project, which is scheduled to be complete at June 30th, and that is offset by a grant. And quickly, I have a couple more slides left before I turn it back to the chair. But in planning and development, we have the business retention expansion, which is partially offset by a grant. Continue work with a drainage consultant. Continue investment in CIP, and I should note that some of the drainage consultant work will be partially offset by a grant. Growth and zoning project offset by a grant. And we have investments in banners, horticulture, and signs. So all of that summed up, where we end up and I have two slides here that kind of sum it up together, are what are each of those functional areas kind of share of the pie, if you will. So the way I've done this is I've taken our levy and our OMPF funding, because I don't think it's fair to say one department over the other gets OMPF. So I've added that on as our funding that we've got, because our OMPF is confirmed. I take the revenue from general government and the expenses from general government, and then I come out with the shortfall is 1.3 million. So that is the general government reliance on the levy. Protective services, same thing. It becomes out to be 1.7 million. Transportation services, 3.1 million. Environmental services, 42,000, but we must note that the majority of environmental services is offset by the curbside collection fee and for the contracts, and then we also have tipping fee revenue as well. That brings in quite a bit of revenue for that department. Recreation and cultural services is $787,000, and then planning and development is 276. So what does that look like on a pie? Is this. So the yellow is the transportation services. So 20% of the transportation services, like I spoke about before, is debt repayment. Over half of protective services, which is the red chunk. You probably can't see my mouse, but the red chunk, and I'll zoom in there for anyone that's colorblind or not. That half of that is for OPP. We have capital, which is the purple chunk. Okay, so what I've done for there is after paying for all this functional services, we had about $72,000 left of taxation, so that can be contributed towards capital. I also took the transfer to capital reinvestment reserve out of general government, because I don't think it's really fair to show when the majority of that is going towards capital. So all in all, we have 5% of the levy goes to pay capital. So zoom out here. Recreation and cultural services 11%, general government is 14%, playing development 4%, and then that little sliver in there, if you can kind of see it, it's in gray, that is environmental. So at that point, I know there will be a lot of questions, so I will pass it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Any questions? Mayor Moore.
When you started talking about environmental, you mentioned the number 3,070 users or 3,700 users?
3,708 users at this current time. So any increase in essentially any increase, $1 increase in the fee represents $3,708 of additional revenue of the curbside collection fee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Councillor Mackay?
I'm going to bitch about what I do every year, but the airport. The airport is used mainly by the Army, MNR, Air Ambulance, and police. Stuff we already pay for. So let them pay for the Air Force. Every year we put out $20,000 to that. It seems we could put it somewhere else useful. If they had one flight a week to Toronto, I'd say that's fine, but they don't. So we're paying for something that doesn't benefit us all.
I can't disagree with you. I don't really have an opinion on it, to be honest with you. I get the news from them of what they expect, so
I just feel I have to say it.
No, that's fair.
So just so you know, Hydro One also uses it. They use it to get into the parks. Yes, the police use it, but they use it to bring in special forces, to attend to special criminal investigations. Also, economic development within Renfrew County is used. They've used it quite a bit for economic development. There are businesses that are flying in. Small jets can land, or large jets, not like big 747s or anything, but they're in quite a bit to look at properties in the area, to purchase, to develop within not only Whitewater, Laurentian Valley, Petawawa, Pembroke, but certainly in that end. If they were going down towards Renfrew Armpire, they would use the Armpire Airport, but certainly this side is Whitewater up. And it's hugely used by air ambulance. So that is, and it's a gas stop, so you say. If we did not have the airport there, the air ambulance would not be able to properly operate within our area, because a lot of times they need to stop and get gas before going to or from Ottawa. So it's an important asset that we have, and I am all in favor of keeping that asset going. Councillor Mackay.
I agree with everything you said, but we already pay for that stuff. We pay for the Army, we pay for M&R, we pay for, every time we pay taxes, pay for things on there, and then we have to pay again.
The Army doesn't use it a whole lot, and they do donate towards the airport when required. There's also other fees that are collected from the different businesses. From the ones that have hangars there, they pay rent. They have fundraising events to, you can buy a foot of runway. There's all kinds of things that they do. So no, I'm not willing to give it up just to save money on the OPP costs, and yet it's going to take 2 days to get people here, the special forces. So I'd rather have them here within an hour than have them all travel up by road and then show up here. It's too late. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. I totally agree with Councillor Jackson. There's a lot of benefits that aren't shown. Because number one, yes, M&R use it. What do they use it for? They use it to fight fires. That's what it's used for. They're there. If there's a forest fire, I mean, it all could turn around and be like Fort McMurray, and there could be areas that would not be there, because if it's not there, they're not there to help to control that. As well, I don't know, air ambulance, they have to have fuel. When they leave, they've got to be full of fuel. If they pick up in Pembroke, their plane has to be full, because they have no idea where they're going, either during the flight or right after the flight, so it must be full. If we lose that, well, the cost of ambulance service would triple on that. It's the hidden things that people, it's not the going, the passengers. No, there isn't that much passenger, although there was a great bigger plane came in the other day at the airport. I had a picture of it that was going to work with CNRL. So there's a lot of hidden things that's not out there, and I didn't understand it until I started to sit on the airport commission. And then at that point, you learn a lot about the services that are there. Just like the police, just when that shooting was, and the gentleman, I think it was at 3, well, they were flying out of Pembroke to track him. They were using that airport, that services, to track that man. So those are kind of things. But anyway, I'll stop at that.
I also can tell you that I'm in the line of traffic for the air ambulance, and it is used quite a bit. It goes kind of right over our house, and it goes steady. Councillor?
I just one more thing to say. I agree with everything everybody said, and it's true. But we've already paid for that, guys. We pay for it. Every army, every M&R, everything we've already paid for. 10% of our budget goes to policing. Think you can squeeze a little bit out for the airport? That's all I got to say.
So I think where you're missing the point is, yes, we pay for that service. However, we're not paying for the airport for them to utilize that airport to be able to provide better services. We don't pay for the airport through our OPP. We don't pay for the airport through M&R. We don't pay for the airport through any hospital. We pay to ensure that the airport stays there and that service is available. All those services. Sean.
Just a quick point of clarity too for anybody that's listening or watching. We aren't the sole owners of the airport. We do share in that, and the invoice or our share of what we pay is based on our assessment. So I believe it's Petawawa, Pembroke, us, Laurentian Valley, Laurentian Hills, Deep Rivers, and as well. So we do share in that, and the way they I guess decide to divvy it up is based on our taxable assessment. So.
Councillor Nicholson.
It's been a great argument listening to both of you, and you're both sides of this are bringing up great points, and I didn't know about the airport before I joined council, so I'm still learning. Yes, the $100,000 shocked me. I mean, that's 10 kilometers or 2 kilometers of road to be done. So I look at it and think, oh gosh, how does it really affect the residents here when we're trying to find the dollars and cents to support them? Based on the information that you guys are talking about, I would ask if the mayor would consider asking for a delegation from the commission to come and give us a presentation just to review what it does for us, and we can share that if it's public with the community.
Great idea. So I turn that over to the CAO for confirmation.
Yes, and I believe it's been a while. I don't think they've come this term of council, so we'll reach out to them for a presentation and an overview.
Councillor Nicholson.
I have a couple questions on different items. I didn't know if do you want to try to attack it by the chart, like the way he presented it, by topic, or how did you want us to frame?
I think you start with your first question and then go on.
Okay.
Because the budget's not broken down by each individual general government, protective services, if you're going through the pieces of paper, then it's probably easier to identify it like that for the treasurer.
It's totally up to how you want to do it. So
You're the chair. I'm with you. Okay, so I will ask a question and then pause if people want to jump in with their own questions. I want to jump. I'll go to rec first for no other reason than it's listed on my sheet of paper here. And I notice we're not funding the swimming program, and I'd like that we have a swimming program, and I would like to propose that we put it in for the next version of the budget and find the money internal to rec. I'm not suggesting an increase in levy. Find it internally.
I can just start that when we can. My estimation on the cost will be somewhere in the vicinity of $20,000 to $25,000. So just for clarity purposes. So I believe I've talked to Jordan, 2 students, and then an extra little bit of supplies for them. Obviously, there's the opportunity to offset it with potential summer student grant, but there's no guarantee, and there's no guarantee if we do get a summer student grant, it would cover that that student. It might cover a park student, or it could cover a road student. So just for the number purposes on that's my estimation in speaking with the manager of Parks and Recreation.
If I can just add, we considered it, and I think we were planning for it. The issue with COVID, and to be honest, is it's difficult to attract, and there are a lot of unknowns. And I know when we had the program, finding qualified lifeguards was difficult. So in terms of trying to figure out all of what we could handle and figure out, although we're committed to a swimming program, our recommendation was to wait another year. Although we understand that we're a water community and that this is important, just in terms of, and then working with other partners. So looking at swimming programs, and I know from the rec, the Westmeath Rec, where people are using the pool in Pembroke as an example. So because of all those unknowns, we decided to leave it out from this draft, but should council want to reintroduce it, students would be the way to go. In the past, it's been 2. But again, it's just kind of picking our spots. But if council wants us to pursue it, we would pursue it.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head, CAO. To me, we're a water-based community, and it's a life-saving skill. Of all the programming that we could offer, I would like to prioritize this at the top. And I do acknowledge that the recruiting is a challenge, and I did speak with Jordan about it offline, but even if we could buy down some of the programs offered at another location or another municipality, it would still be a benefit for our community. And we're surrounded by water. So I would really encourage council to consider having staff go back and see if we can find the 25,000 or whatever would end up being in the end to offer this as a priority program community.
So what you're suggesting is if we can't get summer students for swimming instructors, that we make, I think that should be put out to the facilities that currently offer indoor swimming, to see if we could get a bulk purchase for, a number, or what would the fee be to use their facilities? To see if is that what you're suggesting?
We did that, either before I was on council or my first year, but we did that before when we had a problem. We basically had a Whitewater region rate, I think, at Pembroke. Is that right, Jordan? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And whether or not, I don't even know if the swimming pool is open, and if I think it is, but I don't know if they're offering lessons yet or not. I think they are, but I can't guarantee it. And with COVID. So I also agree that it is an important service that we can offer our ratepayers. Certainly we don't have an indoor pool, nor do we want to have an indoor pool, but I think it's important to have people be able to swim. So your next question.
So I'll stay with Jordan since he's in the hot seat. So I just noticed that when I looked at, maybe if you go to that revenue slide.
Like the numbers before the pie?
Reliance on levy? Yeah. So when we look at rec, and this I'm struggling with, and I'm just going to put it out there because I think it's going to warrant investigation in the future, and I think council has a responsibility to make staff have our ideas on this if it doesn't happen this year, within the next year. But I mean, the expenses for recreation is $1 million. And now I acknowledge that includes parks, but parks is only about 25% of that. So it's costing us $750,000 to run the 3 arenas. We're only collecting $250,000 in revenue. And some of that's grant. It's not revenue. So essentially we're paying $500,000 to have 3 rinks. So we are, worrying about $100,000 for the airport, or we're concerned about $25,000 for swimming lessons, but we're spending $500,000 so that the rinks can operate to provide that facility. And please correct me, Sean, but I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that investment that we have in that infrastructure, and we make sure that that's what we want to continue to do in the future. It's not something we're going to settle tonight, but I just want to make sure. Sorry, Sean. You want to correct my numbers?
If I can have my chair. I was just going to, it's not a big difference, but in that expense is also library and museum, so it's about $100,000. So your $1 million is down to $9 40. Not that it changes what you're saying, but just to add also a little bit of clarity.
And I guess to follow up on that question, has there ever been a study as to where the need is for the facilities? Do we need 3 facilities? I'm somewhat shocked that it's only $254,000 that we're bringing in, because all 3 of these facilities ran with very little grants before from the township. So I'm not quite understanding why there is such a huge difference, $600,000 in difference to cost to the levy. Well, we certainly didn't give out $600,000 to offset any of those arenas before. So I guess I want to know what the problem is. Where's the issue? What are we doing wrong?
So maybe I can start and then Sean and Jordan can add. I would say demand has taken a significant hit due to COVID. I think our rough guess is there's might really right now demand for maybe 1.25 arenas, but we've made a commitment to open all 3. So I think demand has been impacted. I know Jordan can speak to how many hours Muskrat a week are no longer using, let alone different groups. So, and I would say that once they came under our umbrella, we made sure that they were operating accordingly because we're dealing with ammonia. And I'm not saying that they weren't good stewards, the volunteer organizations, but I think running arenas have some serious health and safety considerations. But I think it's not an expense problem solely, although there is a number of infrastructure needs that we've had to deal with, but we will have to deal with in the future. But I think right now the impact is notably in terms of demand. And I don't know if Sean could probably speak to kind of the deficit before COVID, but Jordan can also speak to demand as we know it now.
Maybe I'll just start quickly crunching some stuff here. So it's $787,000 reliance on levy. About 100,000, we'll call it probably 90, is library museum. And then there's about 330 to parks. So your arenas are now down, it's not maybe great, but the arenas, just quick, without taking time to actually go back and really dig into it, it's about $360,000 deficit. So it's not 600 or 700. That's the amount now. In comparison, just for the last couple of years, again, just quickly going through today. Sorry, I'm all over the map here. 2018, and this is real numbers. Based on the FIR, the financial information return, was like $280,000. In 2019, it was 335. So I mean, it's more than those years, the shortfall, but it's kind of in line in terms of the decrease in demand, and then less. I think there's a little bit more time between ice times. So anyway, just so we get an understanding that it's not 700. That's more is around the 360.
Has there been any consideration to do a study whether or not we need the 3 facilities or not? And maybe changing one facility to have permanent pickleball or whatever throughout the year? Because I know that's a huge demand, not a huge demand, but as our residents are getting older, I can see that being a more feasible thing. And as well, people are not having as many children anymore. So that minor hockey, as we all know, is going downhill. I mean, on top of that, the COVID and the increases in costs and the ability for people to have money to afford to send their kids to different sporting, there's all of those things. So I don't know. I think maybe a good study needs to be done. Unfortunately, everybody hates studies, but we need to know if we need to keep these 3 facilities and in what capacity.
So the 2 studies that we did do, so the Recreation Master Plan recommended natural ice in one of the facilities, and the Parks and Rec operational review that was funded through modernization recommended the repurposing with a discussion of one facility. And we have a task force right now with Westmeath to discuss options. I should say that the openness of repurposing a facility in Westmeath is not necessarily rising to the top. So we have the studies that say likely you need two. The other thing I would add is the asset management plan and some of that capital overlay and life cycle stuff should be taken into account. We have 3 facilities that are aging. In some cases, the slab might be 20 years over one facility. The equipment, the plant was bought used and is beyond its useful life. So there will be some decisions in the future. But I would say the deficit is increasing. And so you're going from 280 to 320 to 360. And the question will be post-COVID, will that come back? Will that demand come back or will it not? And then I think that will force your hand. And also just the infrastructure costs. So replacing an ice pad, Petawawa just did it for more than $1 million. So add that to the mix. So Jordan, could you confirm though the loss and demand for this year for minor hockey or any other demand, just in terms of what we know now?
Sure, absolutely. So to start with minor hockey, last year was certainly an interesting year. Their teams were essentially split in half. And I don't know if some people lost kind of momentum or didn't know what to expect for this year, but typically Muskrat usually allocates about 40 hours of ice time a week. Right now they're down to about 25 hours a week. The situation that they're facing right now is they almost, for the first time ever, they almost didn't see a rep team or a competitive team. And what's taking place is that any of the players that are good enough to play in the ACES program are playing with the ACES, and then those that have been good enough to play for rep, they can't make the rep teams, so they've been letting them go and signing with other municipalities. So that leaves Muskrat with primarily house league teams. The second thing is I just want to share some information with council as well. Last year, last January, so in speaking 2021, COVID hit for the second time. We shut down facilities. We were not operating for about 6 weeks. When we started to operate again, we took in approximately 250 hours from the middle of November till the end when ice was out. The previous year before that, we were over 1,400 hours of ice time from January to the end of March. When we look at the fall of 2019 until we're here right now, so last year was a little less than, a little over 300 hours. In 2020 and 2019, we were double that, so 600 and some hours just in September and October. The second thing is, too, that we have to understand is with COVID, with the delay, with all the changes with the provincial government that has been pushing down on everyone, a lot of people, was unsure of things. So a lot of things are being pushed back. So typically, we generally have all the game schedules by mid-October. We still don't have all the game schedules from all the organizations. So as you can imagine, we're looking at already being a month behind. So all those things have impacts. And as you can tell by the ice rentals, they're just simply not there with COVID right now.
So just doing a quick and dirty calculation of 15 hours a week based on 32 weeks from September to March, we're losing about $53,000 in revenue. So, and I don't think that those times are being picked up anywhere else.
No, and that's the thing, and what we have to understand too is that's just minor hockey, right? So everybody is down. Our adult leagues are down, and it could be an hour or two a week, but with the calculation over that time period, they all start to add up, right? So it's not just minor hockey.
Yep. Councillor Mackay.
I'd just like to talk about demographics in Beachburg. There's a baby boom in Beachburg. Not saying that because if you go there, you go to any facility, you can tell them. There's all sorts of children, 4 and under, 3 and under. There's hundreds of them. They're breeding all over the place. So let's not close any facilities for a few years. I don't know, is that the proper word? No. Multiplying. It's agriculture. But there is a lot of kids coming up. The school's packed. So.
And that's good to know because that hasn't been in the past. And maybe COVID has had something to do with that too.
Maybe.
I know there's a lot of babies. But question for you, if we were to put that question on the ballot, when does that question have to be determined?
Unlike change, the clerk can probably report back on that. I'm thinking it's later than the composition, so we'd have some time. And the question, just to be clear, the question has to be able to be answered by a yes or no vote. And if 50% turnout is achieved and 50% support it, then council will be obligated to take action. But what I think we're saying is you have aging infrastructure. So although you have aging infrastructure and decrease in demand and an increase in costs, and that will not be sustainable in the long term. And that is so maybe if the clerk, we could prepare a report on a question on the ballot, just generally in case other questions merit being added.
Okay. Councillor Nicholson, continue.
Just to close up on this one, I don't think anyone in council, just to make sure that Councillor Mackay is rest assured, I wouldn't suggest prioritizing one sport over another or one facility over another. But we have to make sure that we spend every dollar that we can most effectively. And right now, those three facilities really support the majority is hockey. And my question would be, if we're going to go back and if we decide that we're going to continue to invest this money in infrastructure and operating, how can we maximize its use for the community? All those young families are taking dance and basketball, and they're not doing it here in our community. Yet we're spending the money, the tax dollars of their parents, to provide for a facility that maybe it's not equipped for them in the way that they want to use it. I think we just got to keep up with that. And unfortunately, that's not a whole bunch of direction for staff, but I think we have to be open to other solutions and listen to the ratepayers. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions? Have you contacted the departments prior to the budget discussions, and did you get answers? Is there anything that you did not get an answer to that needs to be addressed tonight or changed?
We come back later to talk about the capital plan, right? So that'll take, and I'll do roads as part of that. No, the only other one that I'll throw out is another rec one then, and it's just about the partnership grant. And Sean confirmed it's 10,000, is that right?
Yes.
Which is half of what we had been using before?
Or double of what we had.
Before last year, yeah.
So it's double of what was last year, but it would be yes, half. So we're working our way back towards what it used to be. Or that's what we're proposing at this point.
And is the 10 split between March and September?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Moore.
Just one comment. It's not a question to anybody in particular. Our demographics are changing, and we really have to start to look at how we're going to change. The people that used to use our facilities are gone. Half their children are using our facilities, and now with COVID, half of them aren't using our facilities. But we have that whole other demographics that are outside and looking to continue exercise in the off-season, the rainy days and the wintertime that we're not facilitating at all. We're not cornering that market. And I think we have to change the way we look at our demographics. That's all I want to say.
I agree. Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Councillor Nicholson, I'm not against any other sport. I think anything to get kids out and doing something is fine with me. I just want to say that we have a lot of babies, that's all.
Reeve Rigger.
And if I can just put a throw out there, I think we really have to take a look at our seniors population, because that is what is really increasing at this point in time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, Sean, you're on.
We're moving on. Okay. So we'll now move on to water. And these sections are a little bit shorter than that last one. Okay, so the water expense breakdown on this pie chart, total water budget's just over $1 million. It's $1,080,000. The Aqua contract is the largest expenditure at $563,000. So that's 52%. debt takes up 12%, debt repayment. And we'll get to the description of debt later on when I show the debentures, but just as a descriptor here, Haley and Cobden Water Treatment Plant, Haley Distribution, Beachburg Distribution, and then 20% of the True Love John and Crawford debenture. In this proposal, we do have a transfer to reserve of $184,000 for future capital work. And you'll see that transfer to reserve is 17% of this pie, and then the other makes up 19%, and that would be some salaries, materials and supplies, and some other operating expenses like that. The users that we have in water, we have 15 more units than we did in 2021. So just to kind of see how much of residential rate we have 980 units that are either residential or multi-residential. So that's 91% of our users are either in residential or multi-res. And then if you add in small commercial, which pays the same rate as residential, it's 1,030 units. So that's 96% of our units are of that ilk, for lack of a better term. So the rate that we're proposing at this time is a flat rate. There's a recommendation from the rate study of a 10% increase, which would be $8.09 a month. We're not at this point recommending that. We're recommending going to a flat rate. We have some smaller. We have capital that's carrying over from 2021 into 2022. We'd like to finish that. We have a little bit of smaller. There's smaller repair work and stuff that can get done in the operating budget. But just for your information, a 1% increase to the rate would add about $10,500 of total revenue. So I'll turn it back to the chair for questions. Thank you.
Any questions with regards to water? Councillor McLaughlin.
I'm not real quick at this, but a 1% increase, what is that cost to the users?
I have it here. It'd be a monthly impact of 81 cents per residential user, or $9.70 for the year would be a 1% increase, and that would add, like I said, $10,500.
Okay, I like that figure. Thank you.
Okay, so the proposal right now, though, is a 0%?
Yes, we've come with a 0%. I just want to give that, because the rate study did call for an increase, I just wanted to have that illustration of what 1% would be. I figured it would probably be a question that was asked. But we are recommending a flat rate at this point in time.
Sorry, and you might have showed this, but what is the water reserve currently at?
So actually, I did not show that. I haven't showed any reserves in this presentation, and the reason being I should have hit that off at the start. We just closed October, we just finished October. I don't have it closed yet. There was a lot of stuff that capital projects that got done in October, like financed in October. So I would come back with updated reserves at the next meeting when I've had a chance to actually reconcile them.
And I guess my next question with regards to that is what kind of projects are we looking for in the future, and will we have reserves, or should we look at a 1 or 2% increase in order to put more money into reserves for future projects?
Well, I guess the way I would answer that is the rate study called for the 10% increase. The comprehensive study of economists that looked at everything said that this year it should be a 10% increase. There's always going to be capital work to get done. I don't have that list in front of me tonight. I'm not sure if Lane does or not, but there is work that can get done. A 1% increase adds, $10,000. Is that a start? Maybe, but that would be really up to council. But the economists that did the study did call for a large increase for capital over time. Now, I will say it's not that capital is not getting done. There are some carryover projects, which I get to later in the slide during capital. So there will be capital work being done. It's just no new capital work at this time other than small repairs. So I'm not sure if Lane, if you wanted to add what else could be done, or if you are good with that answer.
Yeah, well, one of the two projects is Hume Street in Beachburg, and then also Crawford here in Cobden is one of the two majors that we have designed already. And speaking of then one initial too, we also changed the the generator at the water treatment plant in Haley this year was not budgeted, and also a few other projects that are being carried over. And there is a few sewer operating that are minor, like filters and changes that is, but it's more classified as operating, not capital.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, did you have another question?
It was just more of a comment because I've sat here for a lot of years, and for a long time we had no increase, and then all of a sudden we had to have a great big increase. So I'm in favor of a small increase, but I also, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking we have to be careful because I would like to get the wastewater results costs before we decide whether we're going to increase our water rates, because we have to be fair with our residents. But I certainly understand where the chair is coming from, and I don't want to see that mess come again. So I am in favor of a slight increase. I don't like zero, because it always comes back to bite you. So those are just my comments.
I totally agree with you. What if we suggested a 2% increase? And I know water goes to all three areas, wastewater does not. So I think we have to make sure that we are doing due diligence to make sure that we can offset some of those capital costs moving forward. And 2% is a lot better than a 10% recommended by the study. So we do have to be prepared, and it's never nice to increase costs, but it's better gradual than one big lump sum at any point in time. I totally agree with Councillor McLaughlin. Everybody in favor of that? Can I see a show of hands? Sorry. Yeah, okay, so tasked for 2%?
Could I just ask
Absolutely.
one question? 2%, would that be about $24 a month? Is that correct?
No, it
$1.60.
would-
$24 a year?
yeah, 18 to
$18.
say 20 bucks.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
that's going to add about estimated $21,000 of extra revenue to
Okay,
go to
yeah.
reserve.
Yeah.
Could we just wait? Or
Well,
we could do that
it's
now?
very separate, and I want everybody to understand that sewer is only for the Cobden area. Water encompasses all three areas and is a much larger, and I understand that there is the debenture cost for sewer that is going to drive the sewer costs up, unfortunately. They have been well aware of that for a number of years. We've been working on that project. So I think we have in our mindset, as much as we want to say, okay, all encompassing, it's going to be this increase, but it is going to help in the end. I think a 2% at $18 a year is very reasonable. Right now, CPI, the September CPI was 4.4%. So, and as we know, gas prices are skyrocketing and everything else. So 2% as opposed to a 4.4% increase is more than fair. Mayor Moore.
We also have to keep in mind that there is a section of Hume Street and a section of Crawford. There'll be a cost for that water line whenever that construction goes ahead, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after. We still have to have money in reserves to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I just want to, this is good direction for us, but it's not the only kick at the can. So we come back on the 24th, you have the public meeting on the 15th, and then you make a final decision in January. So it's just what we bring back to you and at the end of the month. So 2%, we can look at that, and then you'll review it again at the end of the month.
Perfect. Okay. Sean, you're up.
Okay, on to wastewater. This budget is $841,000. The aqua contract is $463,125, so 55%. Debt is 38%, and this is driven by the wastewater treatment plant. There's a very, very small transfer to reserves in red. You probably can't really see it. and then the other components of operating expenses is 6%. So well, sorry, it's on the screen. Sorry. Yeah, cost cutting.
Cost cutting in wastewater.
Gee, that's weird, eh? Anyway, we can always take a break and I can try printing, but we'll go for now. We have 12 more wastewater units than 2021. So again here, residential and multi-residential make up 87.5% of the users. And then when you add in small commercial to that, it's 95%. So this slide's a little bit different than the last one. So we recommend a 4.75% increase, which is a monthly impact of $5.70. For illustrative purposes, every 1% increase is an additional $8,000 revenue and has a monthly impact of $1.20. As presented, so it's changed at this point, but as presented, a resident on both water and wastewater would see an increase of $5.70 or 2.8%, but we know that's going to change. The rate study recommended a monthly rate of $147.42 for 2021 and $155.68 for 2022. We're recommending 2022 to be $125.44. So I think what's important with this number is with that 4.75% increase, we're able to pay for the debenture and the aqua contract essentially is what that's paying for. So that increase, with a 4.75% increase, we have the first year of repayment on that long-term debenture and increase in the contract. So that's where we came up with that number. So with that, I will pass it back to the chair.
Any questions on wastewater? Councillor Mackay?
When is the sewer going to be open? The new sewers,
So
the new plant?
So I'll probably defer to Lane or Steve here, but the last I heard it was in the testing phase at this point in time.
So it's in testing phase, and as per the contract, has to the 14-day test. I guess it failed. Some issues, well, not failed, but some issues, and as per the contract, they restart the 14 days as of tomorrow, I believe.
Okay,
So-
so it's close.
We're on the last leg.
All right, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Just wondering, because there's that work to do on Crawford Street, do we have that money in reserves to do that work, or when we ever get to resurfacing it, is there money set aside to do the work on the sewer system, or will that have to be debentured, or?
It is I would anticipate it's, at this point in time, would be debentured.
Okay, because in the back of my mind, if we have to start to redo the infrastructure underneath, which is sound, which is, I understand, but we're soon going to have to turn some of these paved roads into gravel, because we're going to have to do something. Either we're going to have to debenture and fix these things, or because the surface is worse than a cow trail. And I don't know where it's been. I've been asked for years when we're going to do Crawford Street. And I understand the logic, but also somewhere something has to happen, because it just, I haven't got it figured. I can't figure it. If somebody could tell me, I would certainly appreciate it.
In 2021, was it not budgeted that an engineering study was going to occur for Crawford Street?
Yep, Crawford is ready to go. So when you get to capital, I think a discussion on that. I think the question, and it's mostly it's a water project. Simpson and here in town would be a sewer project. So half and half, likely 50% sewer, 50% road. To the question about reserves, there is money in reserves, but likely might need to be dealt with in terms of any cost overruns at the completion of the project. So to the same kind of conversation you had with regard to water, the consultants here are recommending higher rates to make sure that money's set aside in reserves for future capital. I think the treasurer talked about what 1% is, would add 8,000. So the reserves will not cover your future costs for sewer replacement. For instance, Gould Street has a lot of sewer down the road, hasn't been engineered yet, but Simpson is ready to go. Crawford is a water project. There's just a little piece of water at the other end. The rest is fine. But Simpson, which I think is, we'll talk about capital later, $500,000 to $600,000. Half of it is sewer, so there's $300,000. So if you're looking at reserves, the reserves will, there's money in there, but you need it as a buffer for anything that's not covered through the debenture or the grant. And then it's probably, whatever's left in there is probably not enough for any major projects. Sean?
And I think what we need to look at as well, instead of a 50-50 split, we have to understand that everybody or most people in the municipality are traveling the roads. So maybe there should be a higher percentage of the roads that benefits everybody else. And just if you get, when you get an engineer to do the costing, that they identify what the percentage is overall for the sewer rather than a 50-50 split, because I don't think that's fair, 50-50 split for a water road project or a water sewer road project. So, and then you have to factor in stormwater as well, if there is stormwater, which goes against the roads. So I know in the past we've done kind of like a 40-40, 20-20 at LV, 40 roads, 40 water when there is water, 20 for sewer and 20 for storm. So, I don't know if that adds up. I think that's not, that's too much. But anyway, so, or 30-30, 20-20. I don't know. Okay. Anyways, that's 100 now. I need a calculator. No. But that's what I would suggest, is that it be more fair, because it, and I understand you pushed the patching over to the water budget, but that's when there is a break and it's just a patch. It doesn't fix the whole road. So I kind of wrapped that in my head that that's okay, but I don't know how many other municipalities are doing that either. So just, Sean?
Well, and just as we're talking about reserves and everything, I just think it's important that if we went to the 2021 recommended rate, the increase would be $27.68 a month per user. If we went to what they're recommending for 2022, it would be $35.94 a month increase. So you can see how the rate, what they're recommending, and again, economists, they took into consideration the capital work that need to be done with the growth that's happening, et cetera, et cetera. They're smarter people than I am, and that's what they've recommended. So I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Councillor Mackay.
What's the limit on the charges for these people to pay for that sewer and water? That just keeps going up and up. And when you sell lot levies, does that go towards that?
Are you speaking to the development charge?
Yeah.
No, that would go to fund future capital works that are growth related. So not that past debenture. Okay. Not that past work. But if there was work that had to get done that was...
So that like road, True Love, or whatever, the Crawford Street.
True Love, John Crawford, or the Crawford at this end?
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be any upsizing or anything there.
No. So, however, Ivan can correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the sewage plant, there is a part that was DC eligible, and Astrolab, and then there's no sewer, but if you're thinking of Beachburg, Robertson is also noted as a DEC project with growth happening in that area from Verakin. But Astrolab is noted as the big project as development occurs on the Bennett lands.
What I'm thinking is, if that keeps going on, people on fixed income would have a hard time paying that kind of money every year, and it keeps going up. I'm not saying they don't deserve to pay service charges, but at some point there must be some other way around it.
Well, and staff are recommending 4.75% because it covers off your obligations. However, we're noting that there's not enough money in reserve for future capital, but this at least covers off the debt and the contract requirements, but you're way below what the study recommends. So it's difficult, but 475 is kind of the minimum that you need to go up at least this year, acknowledging that the problem's not going to get better. There will be future capital. But to the councillor's point, if you're doing a road, maybe the road component can be a bigger share to offset the sewer. But for now, 4.75 is the least that staff can recommend in terms of an increase.
No, I'm not saying they shouldn't pay it. I'm just saying it seems at some point, there's going to be people that won't be able to pay it. You know what I mean? That's what I worry about on a fixed income. Thank you.
I think most people live on a fixed income, whether they're retired or not. I know my salary is fixed. And it'll be different as I, get closer to retirement, which I wish was tomorrow. But I understand that. However, you have to pay for your services. Nobody else is picking up the cost. It's just like if your septic system went, you're on the hook for the full septic system. Nobody's helping you out. The rest of the ratepayers are not helping you out. So that's important. Councillor McLaughlin?
Going back to what Councillor Jackson has suggested, maybe we should do a study to see what other municipalities would be, what their shares would be. If we could figure, when you do roads and water and sewer, what's the breakdown of other municipalities as to...
I think that could be just an email blast to the treasurers or to the public works managers that identifies what that percentage is. We don't actually have to do a study. It would be just like,
Well, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that maybe before we start, we could get some kind of a format.
but right now, there's no capital projects
No,
identified right now. So
I
I agree for future that we know what that breakdown should be. Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, I'm not saying because there is no project, and I'm cross because there's no project, but anyway, it is what it is. And we'll leave it at that.
I think for this year, it's tough, but I'm sure Lane would agree that it is just an email blast out, and sometimes it's actual engineering costs or like actual costing. I think it's easier just to do a percentage.
Yeah, and different municipalities do it differently. The contracts are unit-based contract, and they're broken out for water and storm, roads, and usually even like the excavation is part of the water main project, but the road is part of the road. The one area that you do by percentage is the engineering and the CA work. That's divided up, but most of the work is by unit contract, which can be provided. So if, say, if a project is a $1 million project and $300,000 is just related to water, then only $300,000 could be put to water, for example.
But if it does include a road, then it should be water and general, right? So
Yes,
the
what I was
only
saying-
time it would be just water would be the water treatment plant.
Yeah, no, what I was saying was,
Yeah.
road was $1 million for the whole project, and the road part was $500,000, and the storm was $200,000, the water was $300,000, and that section would only go for water for $300,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, Councillor Mackay.
I just think if we sell, once you sell more, not us, once the subdivision starts selling 20 or 30 houses, that would make a difference. That would drop the rate, wouldn't it?
It will help.
All right.
It may not drop the rate, but it may help putting money into reserves so we have future money for future projects.
Okay, good enough.
Councillor Nicholson.
Okay, so I'm tracking all this conversation, and we have to acknowledge that sewer costs so much. The people who use the sewer have to pay for it. We have to attribute all the expenses when we do road repairs and future capital to sewer. But I am a little concerned, like Councillor Mackay is, of, what if we price ourselves out of business? But it comes at a balance, right? We can't, somebody has to pay for this, and it has to be the users. I'm curious if we do have the opportunity to do some kind of comparison between other municipalities, if there could be any other suggestions or innovative solutions that maybe other municipalities have done to try to deal with this escalating to a point where it's inhibiting growth. That's the only request I would have of staff.
If I can just add on one thing on the asset management, we already know from Public Sector Digest, who are working through the thing, that we have a time frame on some of our pipes that, based on the material, their useful life might actually be longer than that, and based on the history of breaks and such of. So in some cases, to the councillor's point, you might be able to pave because it might be good for 20 years. Like, we might be undervaluing the useful life of that asset, but that'll come as part of asset management and life cycle, and then tracking breaks and issues that we're having, and the actual level of service of that asset. So those core assets are due by June 30th, 2022. That will help. That'll add another dimension to this going forward.
And further, I don't think it's hindering development. We haven't had this big of a boom in development in the village of Cobden in forever. And the only reason why we're allowed to have that big boom is because of the new sewage treatment plant. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have the capacity. So we haven't, number one, we haven't been able to expand because the capacity hasn't been there. Now the capacity is there and it's booming. I mean, it's COVID related as well, but I think until we get to a point where the growth and the development slows or stops, that's the time to do it. It's not the time to do it now. Does that make sense?
Completely acknowledged. I'm just worried about what the rate's supposed to be 5 years from now. So I'm tracking. We have the ability. We have the potential for growth, both by demand and with capacity. But 5 years from now, I don't want to have a rate that's sky high compared to another one. If we can do anything about it, if we can't, so be it.
I know in the past, I know I've done water and sewer. Well, not sewer, because sewer in Laurentian Valley is charged by assessment, like a tax rate, which is totally different. But I know that we could find out, or the treasurer could find out, what those costs are from each municipality that offers sewer and compare it. And I believe, I may not be too far off, but I don't believe Whitewater Region is the highest. They're certainly not the lowest, but I don't believe they're the highest. Just as a comment. Councillor Mackay.
Just one more thing. The water runoff, that's a problem with the sewers, right? That's storm runoff, yes. Okay. Does the sewer plant pay for that, or does the taxation from all the township? Like, if Beachburg has a runoff problem, everybody seems to pay, the whole township? You know?
Is there storm?
Is the storm sewers part of the sewer system?
There's
No.
urban storm in Cobden. We don't have a separate urban storm charge. Other municipalities do. But storm, as the councillor said, in a project would form part of the road and everybody would pay for it.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Mayor Moore.
Am I going to finish off? Am I the last one? Okay. The biggest complaint I get from the residents of Cobden is the cost of their water and sewer, and I can understand that it is. For some of these people on fixed income, especially our senior citizens, where they may have not as much money to play with, they're having a hard time and they're selling their homes, they have to leave. So it would be nice if we could get to the bottom of it and come up with some kind of a solution. It would be certainly advantageous if Cobden wants to stay a sleepy little community, but it's growing. But we don't want to lose our residents. Some of them had to move to Renfrew, et cetera, because there's just no place to rent here. So it'd be nice if everybody could stay here.
Yeah, and I think over the last couple of years, that ability has gone up quite drastically to rent within the village of Cobden. There used to not be nice places, not that there's bad places to rent, but there's new places now to rent that we are now seeing even people from outside of the village moving into the village rather than going to Renfrew or Pembroke where the drive used to be. So I think with all of the development that's going on, we are seeing that happen as well. Which is nice. I don't think we have an issue with development in Cobden right now. I think what we have right now is an issue with not having enough contractors to build quick enough for the development that is happening right now. So I'm not concerned about development, and I know that the rates will go up, but like I said, we're not the highest rate, we're not the lowest rate, but we are probably in the high averages than not. Can we put this one to rest? 4.75% increase is the recommendation. Everybody good with that? Show of hands, please, sorry. Yep, okay, good, thank you. Moving on, did you want to take a break before we get into capital, or? Yes, so we'll take a bio break, please, thank you. Welcome back. Sean, you're up.
On the debentures that we have on the books. So in the original PowerPoint, this was at the end, but today I decided to move it ahead in the schedule or in the presentation because it may form some discussion during capital. Underwater, so we get a grasp of the numbers. So water will pay just shy of 130,000 of debt repayment. 47% of this is principal. There's 4 debentures. They're a bit more longer term, with the first one coming off our books in 2031. So these 4 debentures you see will be here for the next little while, I guess, so to speak. Wastewater will pay a total of $317,950 of debt repayment next year, 42.5%, which is principal. These are also longer term, as the next ones that come off the books are the Cobden Sewer in Highway 17 debenture, which began in December 2011. And it would come off in 2031, and you'll see the sewer debenture, the last one of the line, that's the wastewater treatment plant. That starts next year. In admin, there's the solar panels. So admin has 1 debenture. The solar panels, this comes off the books in 2024, which is soon. The annual shy of $36,000. We're getting to where we're paying the majority, upwards of 90% of this is principal. We have budgeted solar panel revenue of $48,000, so that essentially pays for the debenture and more. At the end of period 8 in 2021, so end of August, we had generated almost to the dollar. Well, I shouldn't say to the dollar, within $1,000 of our debt payment in solar panel revenue. So the solar panel revenue pays for the debenture. Under roads, there's a little bit more here. Obviously, this is the largest contributor to our debt. We have an estimated annual repayment of $695, $151. 85% of this is principal. The next loan to come off the books here is the backhoe and Freightliner debenture in 2024, followed by the 2017 excavator in 2025, and then the drum roller and grader in 2026. We have budget for 1 payment of the tandem in 2022. So there's 2 here that are estimated. We have Tandem and Olmsted Jeffrey. We will see, obviously, when Olmsted Jeffrey gets done, the exact amount of that debenture and then what the rate is at that time, et cetera. But this was my estimation back when I did my last calculation of the annual repayment limit. So summary here, we have 3 road projects debentured and 5 equipment debentures. Under fire, this has 2 active loans, one of which comes off the books in 2025, which is the fire tanker. And then the other 2 trucks, the rescue and fire pumper, which were debentured together, come off in 2030. The annual repayment is $76,530, of which almost 75% is principal. This one here, so this would be a new a project that was approved in this past budget that will be rolled into debenture next year. This is 1 repayment, so the annual repayment would be about $26,000 for the life of that loan. So basically, I think with all of that, what you should be concerned about, or the knowledge you should have going into the capital discussion, maybe concerned is not the right term. What you should probably pay attention to is this calculation. Given the data of the debentures presented, I've done my best to calculate the annual repayment limit for 2022, and that's $926,000. It's the very bottom line. So we have, and this is obviously estimated, and our 2022 annual repayment limit will be calculated. We'll probably get sometime early in 2022, the actual what ours is based on our FIRs. But we have $926,000 of what we can pay back per year. What the loan amount can be, it's what our principal and interest payment back to Infrastructure Ontario or the lending institution is. So with that, any questions before we go to capital? I'll turn it back to the chair at this time.
Is there any questions with regards to that? Councillor McLaughlin.
Just looking at the LED streetlight conversion, is there any way we would know what our savings are going to be? Will it offset the debenture payment? I know you're probably not. Well,
I think there is going to be substantial savings. The problem, my problem, and I can turn it over to Steve or Lane at this point after on it is per kilowatt hour is likely going to go up, and I don't know what that's going to go to. So if we save on usage, does it save in dollars? Well, then it depends on what they're charging. So I think, and the reality on this one is it probably will come with some sort of savings, but it's more the environmental impact. I think moving towards LED streetlights is the big win on this one. But I can turn it to, if Steve or Lane, I'll turn to Lane first. Sorry.
When Laurentian Valley did their LED streetlights, it was a 5-year simple payback, and it was paid off in the savings within 5 years.
Okay, well, there's probably a good source of the information I was looking for.
Yeah, and I could add, there's a report coming on next council meeting on different options and then what the cost savings would be.
Because when we did it, and we went the same way for streetlights as Whitewater did to the general public, is when we did it, we still had streetlight charges. So any revenue, any surplus went to offsetting that cost to, because we borrowed from the general account, so it was just transferred over and I tracked it. So it was definitely a savings, and it took 5 years to pay that off. With no interest charge, of course, but 5 years to pay it off. It's simple payback. So it shouldn't be too much. I mean, right now it's going to be difficult to say because you don't know what the revenue source, I guess you could put what the revenue source was for streetlights before, but your expenses as to what they were and what their savings are should pay for that debenture payment within 5 to 10 years for sure. The savings. The biggest thing is you have to make sure a Hydro 1 changes your rate to the LED rate. That is, and once that's done, you'll see big savings. Now, a question that was brought up during break is, do we go ahead and do a couple of roads that will have water or wastewater, and it doesn't affect the rates next year because it won't be debentured until the following year, until 2023. So I guess what I would ask staff to do, and we can kind of do a vote of hands, is to determine whether or not the project in Beachburg as a combined project, is it Hume Cameron in Beachburg, if I got that right, or is it Simpson and Crawford here, is to determine, you have them engineered already, if you can determine which one is the priority, as well as taking into consideration which area has received the most capital work, because we want to be fair across the municipality, and I'm kind of suspecting that it might come out to Hume Cameron that we would actually look at, but I don't know. I just see that there's a lot of work in the village right now, like over the last while, because we've done True Love and all of that. So if staff could make a recommendation to come back, and then those increases in costs would go on the 2023 for the debenture work. Is everybody in favor of finding out what that would be, what that recommendation would be? Could I see a show of hands? Okay, thank you. So that would be for the 24th then, if we could come back with that to add it to the capital. Okay, on we go.
Okay, so into capital. So I have provided a big spreadsheet of an updated, it's not really much has changed on it. There's a few more things in the gray on the second page of it, but anyway. So this slide shows how we intend to fund capital. So the biggest one here is gas tax and OCIF, which are, for lack of a better term, well, gas tax names change, but we'll, for the sake of tonight, call it gas tax, our capital grants. OCIF, we haven't received any confirmation on exactly what we're getting, but we've made an estimation of what we might get. Hopefully we do get something and not nothing, and hopefully it's close to what we have here. So total gas tax and OCIF expected is $464,000, almost $465,000. We intend to use 236, or there's 236,881 of grants. Those are more so for special projects. We have reserve of 392,227. We have that 76,214 of taxation. That's what was left from the levy to use towards capital. And then we have an unfunded amount of just over $90,000 estimated. So, tax and OCIF. So what are they going to fund? Go through the list quick and then into the maps. So Sturgeon Mountain Road from Zion Line to Beachburg Road. Then we'd have Papin Road. A portion of this would be funded from reserves. That'd be Zion Line to Beachburg Road. And then we have the sidewalks and boulevards in Forsters Falls, and that would be in conjunction with the County of Renfrew project. So the map of Sturgeon Mountain here, so like I said, so you can kind of see it in the yellow right there. Let me get out of there. From Zion Line to Beachburg Road, it's 1.2 kilometers. The condition rating at this point in time is 1 out of 10, so I don't know if you can get a 0, but it's at 1 out of 10. The average annual daily traffic count is 140. The proposed surface is double surface treatment. And it's, like I said, it's 1.2 kilometers. Papin Road. Again, this one probably a little easier to see without me zooming in. It's that yellow line, the yellow dotted line. It's from Zion Line to Beachburg Road, 2.5 kilometers. Its condition is rated at a 3 out of 10, and its average annual daily traffic count is 153. So we're proposing to, road widening to 9 meters to allow for 2 3.5 meter lanes and 1 meter hardened shoulder for active transportation, and again, double surface treatment. The next slide here shows Forsters Falls sidewalks and boulevards. So you can kind of see, again, I'll just zoom in a little bit, starts to my left there and runs just before the bridge. So you can see where Lane on his map is pointing out where the bridge is. So the work proposed for next year in conjunction with the county, or at the same time as the county, is to get to the bridge area. I am under the understanding that they are looking, I guess, to do the others across the bridge on the other side next year the county is. So at that point in time, we would look at and probably follow suit along if that was what council decided. Sidewalks are 1.5 meters width, and then the multiple use pathway, which is the MUP on the legend of the map, is 3 meters wide. Over to fire. So this would be funded from reserves. There'd be air monitoring and gas detection. This equipment is paramount for firefighter safety when entering buildings, etc. We have the annual PPE replacement, and then the nozzles that we intend to replace are nozzles that are over 20 years old and need to be replaced. In general government, our server is due. We have been putting money aside for server replacement in reserve, so we'd like to do that in 2022. We would still need a portion, essentially 2022's portion toward, like, when we broke it out evenly over the last couple of years, we'd still need the portion from tax for 2022, but the majority be funded from reserve. Then the active transportation land purchase is the potential acquisition of an abandoned rail line, inclusive of a legal review. Reserves continued, so we have bike racks. Okay, so these would be will be determined on where we are lacking them. Ideally, we have some in parks and arenas, around the arenas and some parks. We have the landfill site improvements. So as the scale project goes in, we'd want to do some improvements there. And then roads, we're going to fund, like I said earlier, some of Papin through some reserves. And then we're proposing to prep for 2023 Zion Line, which is from Hyla Road to Beachburg Road. We've done this in the past to other roads. So on this road, as you'll see, Zion Line, and again, it's outlined in yellow. It's 3.2 kilometers. Its condition is rated a 2 of 10, and its daily traffic count is 184. And again, surface type would be gravel for 2022, and then look to double surface it in 2023. Almost there. Things that are happening through taxation, like I spoke about before, was the server replacement, and then we have some of the server replacement will come from taxation. Then we have the annual computer replacement. In Parks and Recreation, we have the active transportation rest area, which would likely be a shelter, a little bike repair tool thing, display board and map which would take place on the slab or be on the slab. Our share would be 50% of the cost, and we would be looking for some community support for the other 50%. And then we would have the project of roadside spraying, as we've identified that as a project.
Sean, you skipped both the Westmeath Boat Launch Creek Assessment and the La Passe one.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Well, we have the Westmeath Boat Launch Creek Assessment, and I'm not sure where I missed the La Passe one, my apologies. Back here, La Passe Boat Launch Repair, which, sorry, a portion of it would be covered through a grant. Thanks, Rob. And just some capital projects that are carried over. So we still have Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road with some Westmeath Boat Launch repairs, Beachburg Water Treatment Plant, Clear Well repairs, Cobden Wastewater, CCTV, some clarifier repairs at Cobden Wastewater. We talked about the LED streetlights, and then the Beachburg pressure tank. So these are projects that are ongoing and will be carried over to next year as well. So with that being said, I will pass it back to the chair for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. So the air monitoring and gas detection, you're funding it from the ORPC reserve. Is that just for Beachburg? Because we've kind of in the past identified that that reserve was going to go for any improvements in Beachburg, and I'd like to see it stay that way because it is the ratepayers in Beachburg from their hydro that is funding that reserve. So is there something that is just for Beachburg that can be switched out so that we're deemed to have allocated towards Beachburg?
We can definitely look at rejigging the funding sources here.
Okay.
I'm not off the top of my head. I can't say right now there is something in Beachburg, but we can look to ensure that something from Beachburg State uses that reserve or that the money we receive there will be used for something in Beachburg if that's the direction.
So there's $18,000 coming from that, and they would fund all township things. So we can look at this funding sources. They were for bike racks that would not only be in Beachburg, they'd be across the township, and this equipment would benefit all 5 stations. So before the 24th, we can reprioritize so that Beachburg-related projects come from that $18,000.
Yes. Active transportation rest area, Boyer Ladder Route. This was a huge discussion that we did have funding for some things, and it was taken back. So the funding had to be sent back. What is the intention of this active transportation rest area?
So maybe I can talk about it, and then Jordan can, just because the active transportation plan that you're seeing next regular meeting speaks to trailhead areas and rest areas. So this is 9,000, which would be roughly half of the cost. So it would be a rest area for active transportation and a board with cycling maps and bike racks and a repair. So it would be used as a lab for active transportation, but could also be used as for picnics or for that use. So it's programming the slab.
Nobody's going to picnic there. But anyways.
But it's to program the slab at 50% of the costs, and then it would be to work with potentially Tour de Whitewater or others, the Ottawa Valley Active Transportation Network, to fund the other half, or local businesses.
So no washroom facilities?
The site's not large enough for washrooms, and porta potties seem to be working seasonally, so could always be redirected, but it would just be to close out this project with 50% of the costs.
I'm not, in some cases I am in favor, but in some cases I'm not in favor. I think we could probably get funding for sponsorships for the signage. I would like to see that some sort of pull towards that rather than having the full cost of that active transportation on the ratepayers and taxes. I'd like to see some revenue sources come from sponsorships for that particular sign, because I think there's an ability to do that. Bike racks. Where are we putting the bike racks, and how many bike racks are we looking at?
So I think we identified that there would be 8, and we're looking to, at this point in time, just fill in the gaps. So the gaps would be different playgrounds, could be arenas, primarily recreation facilities, but we'll be looking at placing out the racks. And that's to be determined in 2022.
Is there a need for bike racks at the recreation facilities? If you're going there right now, there's hockey. Nobody's biking there in the wintertime. What is going to be offered at those facilities that is going to enhance bicycles to be used to there?
So I think the goal here is to, when we take a look at like the summer months, so outside of the hockey season, of course, yes, the bike racks likely won't be used. What we're trying to promote is healthy living. So say, for example, when we program the slab or we program the upstairs hall, that people can be motivated to be able to bike to the actual arena, and that's just as an example, to participate in their program rather than have to drive. But we're also looking at some of the parks as well. So getting to the parks, being able to put their bicycle in there. A lot of our parks that we're noticing and we're seeing, we don't have a lot of parking area, right? So by offering those bike racks, it just gives another opportunity for somebody to be able to have some sort of transportation there, put their bikes, stay for a while, and those type of things.
Okay, so if we were just to do the parks and not the facilities, what would be the savings?
Well, I would suggest we don't have bike racks so we can prioritize the 8. Like, to be honest, so this is coming from the active transportation plan, which I acknowledge you haven't seen, but there's no bike racks. So we can prioritize the parks and the playgrounds, Veterans Memorial Park, the ball diamonds, where the kids are going to the ball diamonds. So it's not an infrastructure piece that we've been prioritizing and that the consultants are recommending. So
At $1,000 a bike rack.
If or we can reduce it, we can focus on the parks, but there's no bike racks as an infrastructure in the township, so just like we didn't have benches, so. But we can reduce that number if council who doesn't want to spend $8,000 on it, but.
That was just a question that I had. Design of sidewalks and boulevards in Forster's Falls. Driving through Sandpoint, I believe, they have narrowed the road going through there, and it's the county road, and they put curbs up. I don't know how the plows go by. So I don't want to see curbs in Forster's Falls because, I mean, there's so many people that park.
No, I think the issue
I guess I'd
is.
want to see the design.
Well, and I don't think it's been designed. I think this is replacing existing boulevards and sidewalks that are kind of rough. And I know the active transportation plan we know that getting kids to the ball diamond as an example, and the sidewalks and the pools.
Yep.
So that would be looked at as part of the county project. Lane, I don't know. But the sidewalks and the boulevards aren't very good now.
No. I agree the sidewalks have to be done. I'm just concerned about the design of it.
And if I could add, the county's doing it in-house, and then they would just add on our,
Yes.
well, yeah, so it
So
would.
we would be just paying for the sidewalks, I understand that.
Yeah, and
Because the
then-
county
and-
doesn't pay for that.
That's correct. Yeah, and it's not raising the sidewalk at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that it would, would be kind of the same way it is now, but better.
But better.
Just better. Roadside spraying, is that something that we're going to continue to do yearly, and should that be in operating rather than as a special project? So is that like a yearly thing, or is that?
I'll just start with the operating. I just threw it in here because it wasn't in with the 3 point,
Operating,
So I just wanted to identify it as something separated. I would assume that, and Lane can correct me if I'm wrong, he can talk about the ins and outs of it, but I just wanted to pull it out that you can make a decision on that at this point, but I'll pass it to Lane to clarify on the future of it.
Yeah, it is operating, and it's a weed spraying that we do get a lot of complaints of.
Yes, no, absolutely. I've received some complaints with regards to poison ivy and the wild parsnip and all of that stuff along the roadside. So yeah, I agree totally, but I'm just wondering if it needs to be moved into operating so that it will remain there and just move forward with the operating. Councillor McLaughlin, you had a question.
I did. I don't see, and I've looked through the budget, but the banners, to redo our banners in the villages, is that on, where does that fall?
It's in the, back in, I believe, the zoning operating. I can scroll back quickly here.
Okay, well,
Economic development or something that's in that area.
Just bear with me there. I'm going to probably freeze my computer. It's on this planning and development, investment in banners, horticulture, and signs. The last bullet point there, Councillor McLaughlin.
okay, no, as long as it's there, because I was going to say, rather than putting up these bike racks, I would far sooner see these banners put up and back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, because now I don't think there's any, I know there's none in Foresters Falls that are, I think they're all.
Yeah, so we had asked Kruger's to remove any banners that were in disrepair and leave it status quo for the time being until we could initiate sort of a program or initiative to have sort of consistent banners throughout the township. So this is our goal for 2022, is to get a few designs so that we don't have to change them every season, but have maybe 2 designs that would go up in the spring and then another design that would come in the fall. So yeah, we're anticipating to putting up some new banners throughout the township in 2022.
Okay.
Thanks.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Can I?
Yep.
The other question I had, I had a request for a couple of park benches at the beach in Cobden. If that could be put in someplace, maybe some of these bike racks or funding for there could be put into, because I've got all kinds of compliments over and I think everybody has, from the benches and Ivan, it's probably in your budget as well, is it?
Well, Ivan, I don't know if you want to break the good news. Which is bad news, but could be good news in this case.
I think what you're referring to is, I think we purchased 4 benches in this year, 2 of which have been used at the Westmeath Parkette. So we do have 2 benches, from what I understand, that are sort of on hold. So we could implement that move for those 2 benches to the Cobden Beach.
Well, that would certainly satisfy the person who requested them.
Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, 2 questions. Sturgeon Mountain Road, is that going to be double heat shrink or a double chip and dip?
That's correct.
That road is heavily used by trucks.
That is
Did you ever
correct.
think of putting pavement on that road?
Yep, absolutely. We had a price for it, and I knew you were going to ask a question. So for the DST portion, we had it with a 95,000, and the asphalt cost estimated about 190. So
So
200.
$100,000 more.
That's correct.
So how long will this road last?
Any DST road, basically 7 to 12 years, depends on traffic and truck traffic.
And the paved road, do you have any idea on that?
At minimum 20 to 30.
Yep.
So is it, no, I just that road, there's a hill and I'll tell you, it's a bad road.
That's correct.
I don't live on that road, I'm just saying it's a lot of traffic, a lot of truck traffic. But that's our budget, because that's where we're going.
Maybe consider when Sean is doing the reserve calculations with all of these changes, if you could just take a look to see if there is. And maybe whenever, I don't know how much OSIF, if we're getting OSIF, or I guess you have sidewalks and boulevards for OSIF, but see if you can work it out in reserves.
I can see.
And then,
I-
not to hard set until we find out.
No, for sure.
funding.
I don't have a hard number on the reserves, but from what I recall, is the reserve that probably has the most in it is working capital. And it doesn't have it has money in it, but it's not like it's coming down. And the roads purposes, I believe, is probably doesn't have enough. Like all those specialty reserves for departments are kind of like there's not much in there. So we can see when I get that. I'll probably have a good idea by the end of next week. We can definitely see if we can make that work and come back in with an option possibly, or come up with something.
Okay. Councillor McLaughlin.
This will direct to Lane. I'd like to know what the traffic count was and how many permanent residents are on that road.
3.
So the traffic count for 2019 it was not was 92 AADT, and 2020 the 140. So they actually didn't warrant, like, it warrants DST, but the amount of truck traffic that it would warrant more that we know of. One good thing in the future planning with our new traffic counters, we'll know what our traffic counts and also our truck traffic, because that plays a big factor.
Mr. Mackay.
If we pave that road and you want to do Papin Side Road, if it was paved, they wouldn't go on, McGregor's wouldn't go on Papin Side Road because it wrecks that road too. Like, they have two choices, and they'd probably use the Sturgeon Mountain Road more than they would Papin Side Road. Does that make any sense? So if we said this is paved, please use this, and would save the other road, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It might.
It might. It's just then if you use Sturgeon Mountain Road, then they've got to go through Beachburg to get out to that way instead of going Papin Road and getting on the other side of Beachburg. Is that what you mean?
Well, they go both ways.
I know.
And so I think if it was paved, they might, that road's pretty rough, so they're probably taking
They're both
Papin
rough.
Side Road right now.
Papin is
They are,
very
I've
rough.
seen
Yeah, but the Sturgeon Mountain Road is really rough.
Have you driven Papin Road?
I have. It's not as bad.
From
But
Sturgeon
you know
Mountain?
how the hill gets,
Wow.
the hill gets washed out? I'm just saying, maybe we could say to Mr. McGregor, please use this road. It may work, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just an idea, guys.
Madam Chair, we could also tender DST and pavement.
Yes.
In addition to Sean looking at finance
Financing.
options, we could tender out for both options and see which one is most cost effective.
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
I'll stay on the roads theme for a second. And I brought this one up already, Chair, so I'm just going to reiterate it, see what a council reaction I get. But when you figure out that we've got 200 kilometers of hard-covered road surface, and majority of it's DST, and DST lasts for an average of 10 years at $50,000 a kilometer, we need to be putting $1 million a year into our roads in order to maintain them. This year we programmed $300,000. So by accepting the $300,000 budget, we're saying that the $700,000 that we should possibly be doing, we're deferring to the future. Now, we don't have a roads asset management plan, so we don't know, we don't have that perspective, right? And as Rob and Lane have told me a number of times before, but I like Councillor Mackay, I believe that we should be paving where it warrants it, but I have no idea what that is. Is it just warranted because of our discussion tonight, or is it road counts and types of vehicles and road, these things we need to have in order to make decisions like this. And I just put the comment out there. I was surprised to see $300,000 in proposed projects and then another $5 million in standby projects for the future. And I thought, holy smokes, are we just deferring these to the next couple of years down the road? So the roads piece scares me. So I guess I'm just throwing it out there and saying I can appreciate it. I'm not prepared to spend more money right now, but I feel like we're going to have to in the very near future. I'm not counting sidewalks in the 300,000. Yeah. Nobody else?
And it's a tough sell as to who pays for the replacement costs. Is it future or is it present? When the new road is going to be done. So that is something that, in a reserve policy, you can kind of try to comprehend. And then with the asset management plan, once it's on Public Sector Digest, you'll be able to see exactly what roads are falling behind and what roads are not. It's a fine line as to who's going to pay for that road. Does everybody want to pay for it now and it's not going to be replaced for 20 years? Or is there a percentage that 25% now, 75% later? I don't know. It's a tough line to
You're talking between asphalt and.
No, 25% now towards reserves.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And then 75% when you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough line. And it's something that I think all council and staff struggle with in every municipality is what is fair to the current resident and the future residents. Anyways, Sean, you were going to say something?
Sorry.
I was just going to say, we also just got direction in the last chunk to look at a major road project as well that's not reflected here. So there is that in what we're, there's that project as well. But anyway, I'm prepared to pass it back to you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and that's also taking into consideration exactly the Cameron, Hume, and Simpson Crawford. So that, to discuss which, so when we look at it, Cameron Construction is $1 million. I don't see Hume is 485,000. And then we look at Simpson Street, 550,000. And Crawford Street, $1 million. So kind of about the same, but then it would be debentured over time. So, and I see that there are some debentures coming off the line in 2024 and 2025, not necessarily for roads, but there are some coming off for roads and some coming off for fire, but I'm sure there's going to be something else for fire to come up. Admin, the solar panels, but they're paying themselves. So there is going to be some room in the future, but.
I know the CAO keeps telling me wait for the asset management plan, and I'm good to wait for it. When it comes to roads, I mean, it's 43% of our budget right now. It's really the biggest business that we have as a lower tier municipality. We should be funding roads first, then arguing about bike racks and other things. So I would just encourage, I know you're going to come back at the next meeting to look at Crawford and Hume, or Hume and the other one. I think it's good to throw them in there. We can mull over it for a couple of weeks and then we go. I'm going to go on to a second point, and same related is gravel. So I don't know anything about gravel, but we budgeted 100,000, right? And that does 12 kilometers this year. We have 127 kilometers. So then we would be doing 12 kilometers every 13 years. So I don't know if that's good. I'm looking at the roads guys. Is doing a gravel road every 13 years good? Or is 100,000 too little and we're not doing enough? I don't know. And we need that litmus test back to say we're either on track, we're underfunding it, or we're overfunding it, or I don't know.
So if staff can kind of look at that, unless you have an answer now, but I'm sure it's going to take some time. Some roads are better than others, so it would, and it's always a catch-up.
I should just say that I went around with the road super at the time to do some of the conditions, just because I'm curious. And the roads that are pretty good got gravel probably in the last 10 years. So on a bad one, I said, well, when do you think this got gravel? And he was like, well, I think it was at amalgamation. So the goal would be to get every 5 years, but there's a lot of roads here. So the problem we have is catch up, stuff that kind of we're talking about water and wastewater rates.
Yeah.
So there's both trying to catch up and then getting on there. So 100,000 is probably not enough, but it should be closer to 5, but it could be every 7 years. But the asset management plan will also speak to gravel. Previous plans didn't. This one will.
Perfect.
And then prioritizing them as well, right?
At least then council we'd all be talking off the same song sheet, and all we'd have to do then is comment on the priority and not whether or not it should be done or not. Is that okay? I'm good to leave roads there. If I could change to a different topic, Chair.
May.
Fire. So for fire, we've got 2 items in the wish list part, yellow and gray, I think. I don't know exactly where they are because this is my new sheet, but the first one is just this training site phase 1 for $18,000. I had the fire chief talk to me a whole bunch about this. So what I want to do is just highlight its importance and its potential for not just, it's saving a little bit of money, but really for qualifying our firefighters in-house, internally, at basically no cost. Maybe I'll let the fire chief, can you speak to it for a few seconds, just about what you envision there?
Yeah, absolutely. For the actual site, it would include
Could you put your mic on? Sorry. I don't have one. Okay. You scared me.
Yeah, so one of the challenges we have with training is whenever we're doing our evolutions on buildings that are actually being occupied, we have the potential to damage them. So we either train in a fashion that's not realistic to firefighting, or we risk damaging our buildings. We were fortunate enough recently to have an abandoned house to train on through the month of October, which was fantastic. Unfortunately, those only come up every couple of years if we're lucky. So we need a place where we can go and train without worrying about damaging equipment. We don't have the same luxuries as other jobs have, where you can gradually learn as you go. We don't have fires every day. We can't kind of ease into things. We have to be ready to go when there is a call. So with the closing of the fire college and the ability to train in-house, we need a place to do it. We have classrooms, we have online learning, which is fantastic. The component that we're missing right now is a place to do our practical evolutions.
Just with regards to that, is there any talk within all the fire departments in the county to have a central location where that can happen for all departments to attend?
Yes and no. There is talk of a regional training site at CNL. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be exactly what we're looking for, because it would be much like all the other regional training sites where we would pay a tuition to attend a course. When the fire college was operational, tuition was $65 per course, which included lodging and food. Courses now typically are $400 without lodging or food. So it's gone up astronomically. And there's issues with CNL, with I believe with their management and getting this actually rolling. It's been a long process and it's still up in the air. Mississippi Mills is the next, it would be the closest for us, but it's the same thing. Expensive tuition and availability of courses.
Is there any thought of approaching the county to see if they have any property that they would essentially allow the fire departments to use?
I think the struggle with that is we go back, we're training with other equipment, not our own equipment, or we're driving well out of the region with our equipment, leaving this area unprotected. It would be really nice to have something here. It doesn't have to be fancy or overly expensive, and it can be phased in over time. But at some point, we need a place to be able to train where we can take vehicles and staffing in an evening and not spend an hour driving each way.
Councillor Mackay.
How much money did you spend on training when you had the college in wherever it was?
Honestly, I can't say. I wasn't privy to that at the time. Some years we sent a lot of people, other years not as many. So I really don't know. I'm sure we can get those numbers for you for a later date, but I don't have them.
So the cost would be, if you said to set up our own course, it'd probably pay for itself over a few years, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because it's getting into these courses, and it's just the courses that we're looking at now are our firefighter and our officer courses, where we can do in-house. Some of it's online, and it's kind of at your own pace versus sending somebody away for a week. And a lot of people just can't do that because they're scheduling. They can't leave work for a week.
It'd be nice if you do it in the summer at night, somewhere guys can drive, and 'cause they're all working other jobs.
Yeah, and the only way for us realistically with a department our size to certify our members is to do it in-house. The costs are such that we can't, it's not realistic to send everybody away.
Okay, thank you.
Like the firefighter level 1 course is 78 hours online theory learning and 72 hours practical. So to send somebody away for that it's not realistic. It's not going to happen. People don't have that kind of time to dedicate, and we don't have the funding to send them to these courses.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Nicholson?
So, I'm based on everything we've talked about tonight, I'm not prepared to say, hey, we need to put this 18,000 in, Sean, make it happen, find it in one of these working reserves. But I think it's an important enough issue that the capability we need to have, I'd like to see in Whitewater. If there is an opportunity mid-year, we're talking about used sea containers and stuff like that. If we find the site that fits, I know the CAO's got some options already, but I'd like to encourage this as one of our first opportunities should the conditions come around in the next year for us to take opportunity of it, assuming that there's money at some point. So I just plant the seed out there in terms of my offering as something I'd like to consider. And the other one is an issue. Rob has been working with us and the fire chief for, what is it called? Water-based wellness checks. And it's in the gray portion, so it's a wish list at $43,000. It's a capability for us to be able to check on people that are isolated due to water or flooding. And us, not me, I'm talking the fire chief and his crew. So I don't think we have $43,000, but I'm hoping that there might be a way for us to phase this in, even if it's just internal training or something that we can eat in the current emergency or fire budget to start to build the capability for when we have the money in the budget to buy the boat or the other assets the fire chief wanted. If people want to hear the fire chief talk about it, I encourage that, Chair.
I think the concern that I have with that is 43,200. It's in a rare occasion, and I could be wrong, but I think over the last 20 years, it's been twice, 2017, 2019. We are supposed to be in a 1 in 100 year floodplain. I hope it doesn't happen every 2 or 3 years because I'm not going to do it. I'm done. But especially for the claims. So I don't see it as a high priority because somebody can, there's always, the Army can do it. They can do the wellness checks. They've done it. The OPP, when we were in 2019, we had so many people going out and doing wellness checks that they were overlapping each other. I'm sure people were getting tired of it. But because the OPP, the fire department, the MNR were going, like the Army was going. So I don't see it as a priority. It's hopefully another 100 years before we get that. But unless we're going to see it happen in 5 years from now and another 5 years from now, then maybe. And again, a one-off to spend $43,000 instead of on roads, I find it difficult. Anyways, I get it, but I find it difficult. There's other avenues where we can get that for free.
Definitely should be left in the gray. We shouldn't remove it. We should leave it there.
Yes.
I'm just going to add on both because Jonathan's done some great work on this. I think we have to have a broader conversation about water rescue generally. We're not in the business of, but we're a water community. If we're teaching kids to swim, what happens when people are stranded? And that's not in our fire establishing bylaw, but it's a long-term conversation to have in terms of service level. And the training sites, we thought we could get it in, but we've got to figure out sites, to be honest. Like where's the best place to put this? And we do have available land that can be used for the fire. So these are priority items, especially the training center, not this one, but anyway, they're important to look at and keep on the radar. And I think the water part has to be looked at kind of more broadly in terms of the level of service in fire, because you're not just going to get, to the councillor's point, you're not going to just get boats for in case of a flood. You'd use them for other purposes, and you'd only cross that once you have that discussion on service level. But that's why they're not recommended at this time.
Just a question for both the training site phase, as well as, and probably not the water-based wellness checks. I can probably guarantee you that it wasn't in the fire review report, but was the training site, and it may not have been because the fire college was still open at the time, but what other priorities are on there that we haven't achieved yet, that we've, like, is there something else we should be looking at rather than those two items?
A training site wasn't specifically mentioned, but live fire was, and currently there's nowhere to do live fire really anywhere locally. So there's one gap, and then the other thing that they were pretty adamant about was certification of firefighters, which we're struggling to do without proper site to do the training. So although not specifically mentioned, it is kind of required to accomplish some of the other goals or recommendations of the master fire plan.
And then there's some big ticket items, the fire tanker, which
Yeah.
is coming up, which we're praying meets safety, but the tanker's on the radar. The other one was consolidation in bays and proper stations that are to today's standards, and none, to my knowledge, none of them really are. But we've reviewed them and they're operational for now, but in the long term, looking at fire halls as they get aged out and have the proper space needed based on modern requirements for fire halls.
I guess I would like to see a priority with regards to the list that was already created, including these two items that are an anomaly that have come up lately since the fire master plan was done. But that's what I would like to see in the yellow. I'm not prepared to move it out of yellow or gray into the budget at this point. Mayor Moore.
Can I get a motion to extend the meeting? And a seconder, please. Motion by Councillor Nicholson and seconded by Reeve Rigier. Thank you.
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Thank you. And no timeline on that either. I didn't put a timeline on it.
How much, well, we've got the rest of the meeting though.
There's one bylaw, and the correspondence, I think, doesn't need to be discussed, and closed session will be very short.
Okay, so no later than 8:30 at this point?
Okay, motion to extend till 8:30. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly, okay.
Chair, you still
Okay.
have the floor.
Any other questions? Okay, last one, we heard it.
From this topic. It's a question about the sidewalks and boulevards in Foresters Falls. In all the built-up areas, we've had complaints about speed control, trying to slow people down. And is there any thought to us being able to use this opportunity where we're doing this design to incorporate any speed controls?
You mean like speed bumps, et cetera? Or,
no, like
or digital?
Something that would, it doesn't inhibit snow plows. There are other alternatives out there. I just didn't know if this included that, or because it's a county road, we don't control the speed or the actual road part. But when you're designing the sidewalks, that's when you make these changes.
Yeah, if I can add, sorry. We're talking to the county. They weren't going out for detailed design, and they would have to go to, if we're raising the curb up, for example, they'd have to go for grading and all the tie-ins. They would have to do that, which would add cost. And speaking of it's county roads, we haven't talked about narrowing the road or anything.
And knowing that the county was approached, staff, not the county council, the county was approached to see if they were interested in purchasing speed signs for the county roads in another municipality. And they said absolutely they were not, that it would be up to the municipality. Now, again, that wasn't brought to the county council floor, but it was not a priority of staff to bring it there at this moment. So it would have to be a motion from council to move it to the county and have the county council look at it. But certainly staff was not in favor of it.
If I could just add, if we are to prioritize that kind of initiative, we would probably look at school zones and stuff of that nature first. Although, yes, there have been some concerns in Foresters Falls. I fielded them. And yes, speeding on any kind of main county road is an issue. But I think we would start looking at school zones first and then work our way through. And they're still looking at the bridge down the line, so there's still other opportunities down the line. But for this one, it's really correcting kind of the aged out infrastructure that is our responsibility.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Now, I'll ask Lean this one, but I thought, did we ever put our speed sign out in Foresters Falls? Does anybody remember if that speed sign was ever put there? That we would have knowledge and have some data that was collected?
I don't believe so it was.
Well, maybe then, maybe we could have it moved to Foresters Falls, and then we would have the data? And rather than taking a hearsay I said?
I think we'd have to ask for permission from the county to put the road sign, the counter out.
On the county road?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
They are
well,
responsible for the county road.
I'm not saying, but is a sidewalk? Is that the county road? Because it has to be.
But then it impedes walking traffic, so you have to be careful.
No, I can't. You can't drill it through the cement.
I know you're not doing that, but it
No.
impedes the walking traffic. So where's the walking traffic
Anyway,
going to go?
It's just a suggestion.
Yep, we could ask
If you don't
permission
want to
from
do
the
it, that's
county.
fine.
I'm not suggesting that I don't want to do it. I'm just saying you have to ask permission from the county. I'm just telling you the process. That's all I'm telling you, Councillor McLaughlin. And would you agree with that, being as a county councillor? Yep. It's not as easy as it seems sometimes, and it's frustrating. Councillor Mackay.
This is Delane. When they're building this new bridge or dam or rebuilding the dam, will there be a sidewalk right on that?
That's a plan that we would like to see.
Because there's not really a sidewalk there now, is there?
No, yeah, and in talking with their EA, that was one of the items that we brought up to them, that, and hopefully working with them to have that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Awesome. So I guess we're done, capital. Is there any ones that you want to see move forward other than the recommendation that staff may make with regards to the two roads projects in Beachburg and in Cobden, moving up the line, or are we good with the current listing as is? All those in favor of the current listing? Awesome. Do you have another question, Councillor McLaughlin?
I did, because I don't see anywhere in the future that we're going to do anything with Colesmith Road from the Queens line to the Kerr line. I've seen from the Queens line
to Blind line, but I agree. I don't see Queens line to
I
Kerr
don't
line.
see it, and I don't know if anybody has driven it, but I really think that area, because I mean, I don't know, and I need traffic counts. I hate not getting traffic counts, because that road to me is probably, on a Saturday, there's a lot of traffic there that runs from Foresters Falls and maybe from Beachburg going to the landfill. And I would like to see it put on the list, if not put up the list quite a piece. So.
I agree. The traffic on Colesmith Road not only is high, but it is also extremely fast. When the construction was done on Colesmith Road from Marjorie Cole Road to Mindview Road, a lot of cars did not slow down, even though it was gravelly when it was first done, and they were flying, I have to say.
There's a few didn't make it all the way either. They needed help.
That's right, absolutely. So it, yeah.
Wait, what section, sorry, if you don't mind?
From Queens Line to Kerr Line, or Foresters Falls Road, right at that corner, right? The one piece, and
Yeah.
it's extremely bad.
And I apologize, yeah, we actually had it, but wasn't, I guess it didn't actually make the list, so I apologize.
Just so that it makes a list for maybe future, right? I mean, it would be nice if it could be done this year.
It would really be nice
But-
if it could even be turned to gravel would be.
Better than what it is now.
That would be a plus. The whole issue, and I think it's one of the roads, but once again, I can't say because it's only my word against somebody else's.
Councillor Mackay.
I agree with Councillor McLaughlin. That road is kind of rounded now. It's, you know, you're going off the center and then there's dips and it's bad. It kind of reminds me of Powers Road when it got like that. You know, it just kind of leads you off the road. It's a little bit slipperier, I think.
Needs to be built up and needs to be paved.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we're done with capital. We've got some work that staff will bring back for the 24th of November. Is that correct?
I believe so. It's coming up here, 24th of November, yep.
Okay.
Just a quick summary, I guess. So we have a 3.5% levy increase. That's with a 1.5% cost of living adjustment. That's also with 5% estimated increase in insurance premiums. I didn't touch on that earlier. 0%, or we're going to go to 2% increase in water, stay at 4.75 in wastewater, potentially have new debt to fund capital. We'll come back with some options that we can configure. We look at the beach program. Is going to be one thing, or do we decide? No, I can't remember now. Okay, well, we'll figure. I have it written down somewhere. And then moving on to the next slide. So just a brief summary of what we were presented. There's your total levy with the operating expenses. The other revenue, the OMPF is in the other revenue. Brings down the operating levy, and there's that $76,000 left for taxation. There's the schedule, so we'll move on to November 24th. And then thank you. And I want to thank staff that stayed because I know that even though maybe some of them didn't speak tonight, they maybe had other things to do and family time, but I do want to thank them for that, for participating, and for the people that were on vacation and hunting. So, and thanks obviously to council.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been helpful to have staff here to answer those questions. Job well done, and we look forward to some of those questions being answered on the 24th. Okay, I'll hand it back over to the mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to the staff for attending this evening. I'm sure you can all leave now. I don't think any of you have to stay. I'm looking at the CAO.
I have to say.
Yeah, clerk has to stay. But thank you all for showing up. I do believe I'm missing a portion of my agenda.
Well done, everyone. Good job.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
You're no longer looking for first term of council.
Okay, we can move on, please. Okay, folks, we're back. Okay, now we're going to notice of motion, number 7. Revigor, notice of motion? No. Councillor McLaughlin, notice of motion? No. Councillor Mackay, notice of motion?
Yeah, I'd like to have a look at the Fletcher Road road allowance,
You mean the dead end?
the dead end, and open it up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Councillor Jackson? Councillor Nicholson?
Yes, I have one. So just to notice a motion to ask staff to look at community safety zones and report back.
Okay, I'm sure there must be a list somewhere from years ago, I would think.
We should probably look at it.
I just remember that coming up probably 10, 15 years ago because there was
Yeah.
the OPP come into the schools and they did
Yeah,
stuff.
we don't have any, and we have school zones, so we probably should be looking at it.
Maybe
So,
that's
yeah,
what I remember. Maybe it was under the OPP umbrella. It wasn't municipal
Yeah.
umbrella.
yeah. So that'll come back next time.
Good. Do I have to do a motion next time or just direct to
Yes,
staff?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no notice of motion, so now we move on to adoption of minutes. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the minutes of October 20, 2021. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor McLaughlin, thank you. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to correspondence. Please read at your own risk and come back next meeting if you have any questions. And then we go to bylaw. Recommendation. Be it resolved that the bylaw listed on November 3rd, 2021 agenda be taken as read and passed. Okay, sorry. Be it resolved that the bylaw listed on November 3, 2021 agenda be taken as read and passed. And this was for vaccine policies, and it was number 21-11-1442.
Can I?
We need a mover
Okay.
and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and? We need a seconder. Councillor Nicholson. Okay, discussion, please.
I've had some people reach out and some questions with regards to the township paying for all of the testing. I would like that revisited and to consider that we would only pay for the ones that need the accommodation due to the reasons the accommodation would be required in the policy. Other than that, I don't think it's fair for all residents to be paying for testing of employees that are not getting vaccinated due to their own decision not to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
We agreed to pay for the vaccines, and part of the reason I thought it was a good idea, because if you go take
Negative,
a fire...
we didn't agree to pay for the vaccine. We agreed to pay
To
for the
test,
testing.
sorry. Okay, so firefighters, if they come to they have to buy the test, and they would come to an hour or 2 hour session. I don't know what they make, $20, $40. So the test would be worth more than what they made. So it wouldn't be worth going. And we don't have a fire department, and we know certain groups that stay at home and farm, and they're the mainstay of our daily firefighters. We could lose them.
Okay,
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I am totally in agreement with Councillor Jackson, because I have gotten the same calls as well. And a lot of people are saying the vaccine is free. So if you're choosing not to be vaccinated, then I totally feel that unless there is documentation of why you cannot you cannot take the vaccine, then yes, we would pay for that. But I'm not in favor, and Councillor Jackson pretty much took the starch out of my thunder because she came first. I was going to say the same thing. I wanted it broke into two pieces. One, the vaccination, the policy, I'm totally in favor. Paying for the testing, I'm totally opposed to. Because, like I said, I've got a lot of people that have came to me and said, why are we doing that? It's not that they're against the other policies, and I've looked at other policies and places, and it's on the onus of the employee. So I'll stop at that.
Okay, thank you. Reeve Regier.
Yeah, thank you. And I too received several emails, several phone calls, and several discussions around this, so I am in total favor of that. And if Councillor Jackson makes that motion, I'd be happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. I myself did receive phone calls. One very irate phone call, right down to what right did we have, and I'll stop at that. So yes, if Councillor Jackson is prepared to make that change to an amendment, then we could discuss it.
So what would we require, Rob, so that this policy can get passed tonight with those amendments?
Yes, it's just an amendment that would read that the policies be amended in order that the employer only pay for testing for those requiring testing due to an accommodation. And then that provision would be added to the policies.
Okay, so that was a motion from Councillor Jackson. We need a seconder, please.
Yeah, and I would second.
Reberg will second it. So at this time, seeing, oh, you have a question? Councillor Nicholson has a question.
For the CAO, did we confirm a cost for the tests?
We're in the process of trying to find if we can get supply but there's a variety of tests available and whether the township can secure it at a lesser price. The policy states if the township cannot secure supplies, we would only reimburse, and then we could put in place procedures for the reimbursement part. So what this would do is narrow the scope like way down, and we would probably look at those that only require, because we wouldn't be paying for them, we wouldn't acquire them, we would only be reimbursing for the accommodation, those requiring accommodation. So it can, my understanding at Walmart, I think $19, Shoppers Drug Mart's $40, and they can be purchased in bulk. The policy only speaks that they should be Health Canada approved, and as long as it meets that requirement, that would be sufficient for the township.
So the two unknowns for me, why I supported this in the first place, was one, I didn't know the cost, so I couldn't assess the impact. And the second thing was, now I've lost it.
The other thing I could point out now is that the county has passed the policy is not paying for the testing. Arm Prior has passed the policy is not paying for testing, any testing. And our understanding is based on the conversation at the county in terms of those municipal heads of council that supported the policy, that most of these policies are going to be replicated across the county in the coming kind of weeks on the premise that testing will likely not be paid for. So this narrows the scope to accommodation cases only.
Go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
I did attend a webinar with regards to legal issues with regards to accommodations, whether or not those tests should be paid. So if somebody requires a stand-up desk or requires a different whatever setup for their desk, that is something that we accommodate, we pay for. So this is an accommodation that I think under health and safety that we are required, or it certainly was led to believe that we were required or to pay for the ones that are entitled to the accommodation. The other ones, there was no requirement, and they were quite clear that they did not recommend any councils paying for those tests unless it was for accommodation purposes only, and I quite agree. Unfortunately, that webinar happened after the last meeting, and this is why I bring it up.
Okay, one other little tidbit that came up today, and the health minister for Ontario, or whatever his title is, Dr. Moore, he did state this afternoon that it's coming to light now that we're into the third phase and fourth phase, whatever. People that aren't vaccinated going into the workplaces and not getting tested for 3 to 4 days after, and to find out 24 hours later that they're positive. So they've already been in the workplace up to 3 days without being tested. And some of these places are having breakouts, and this is what happens and is happening in some of the nursing homes that have outbreaks. It's because of the staff coming in that aren't vaccinated, or visitors that are coming in that aren't vaccinated. So I'm just another thing, and it's hard to stay on top of this and know what to do. So yeah, let's vote on the motions now, and we'll end at that. Any other questions? Okay. We vote on the motion amended motion first.
The amendment that would be, the employer would only pay for testing for those that require testing due to an accommodation.
With that, all in favor? All against? 4-2. Thank you. Passes. And now we vote on the main, which is what we started with, the bylaw itself. Bylaw as amended. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And now we're moving into closed session. I hope if I could see it. Human Resources Update, bracket 2 matters. Recommendation of the Council of Township of Whitewater Region move into closed session at 8:03 p.m. as permitted under Section 9 of the procedural bylaw, with the CAO Deputy Clerk participating in the meeting to discuss 2 human resources matters pertaining to personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations / employee negotiations. Do we need a motion and a seconder? Motion, please. Reeve, seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. We are now in closed session. Thank you. Okay, unanimous. We will go in closed session. Turn off your mic.